chug, 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 chug,
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Wizard Staff Podcast. I'm your host, Blake.
And I'm Guy.
And we are two drunk novices who like to talk about EDH. We do drink and swear, so you've been warned. Please drink responsibly when playing children's card games. I feel like it's been a little while since our last episode, so I'm coming in pretty refreshed and excited about tonight's topic. Guy, what are we talking about?
More like, what aren't we talking about, Blake? Because there is so much fucking product that comes out every year now that we have to now suffer and go through a super long endurance of, let's just remember everything. Take a little trip down memory lane. You know what I mean? Yeah. So Guy and I, we're doing the end of year commander review for the year of 2022.
It's a lot, as you said, and we are going to try our best to kind of strike a balance between being comprehensive and thoughtful while also trying to be efficient with our time. That being said, who knows, we're drinking. This might end up being a 2-part episode where we break it into 2 separate parts. We'll see as we go along. Yeah, this is episode 125, and the last time we did one of these end-of-year commander reviews was episode 110, so that's about 15 episodes, and we used to be making episodes once every 2 weeks, but we kind of cut back a little bit in order to avoid burnout. Yeah, I'm excited to do this. This is honestly one of my favorite episodes to do each year. I'm not going to lie. I have gone back and listened to our previous episodes about what happened in 2021, what happened in 2020 for end of year commander reviews, as a way for me to be like, what even happened that year? Because there's so much that happens. Wizards of the Coast does a pretty good job of keeping you constantly hyped for the new thing, and it's very easy to forget just all the things that happened because something that happened maybe say a month ago feels like it was 3 years ago or something. Or vice versa.
I was totally ready to start talking about Strixhaven, because I was like, oh yeah, that came out this year, and then I realized...
Yeah, or Kaldheim, I'm like, that just came out. No, that was 2 years ago, 3 years ago. Shit.
Yeah. What are you drinking, Blake? We should get through this pretty quickly, so we can start talking about some good old Magic products.
I am drinking this episode, and I got a bottle from a coworker as a Christmas gift. And I got good old Woodford Reserve Kentucky Straight Bourbon. I've had this before, probably on this podcast. It's just kind of a solid bourbon, and I'm just going to try and nurse it throughout this entire episode, maybe 2.
Alright.
How about you?
Good for you. I'm just doing, since currently I'm on the East Coast, and it's now a little past 10 o'clock here, I'm drinking some coffee, and I've spiked it with a little something something.
I forgot it. Oh, fuck. I forgot fucking times.
It's
I'm
okay.
sorry, I'm keeping you up so late.
No, we got a marathon to run, you know?
All right.
So
well, that.
Yes. So
I forgot about this first one.
Yes.
So we're off to a great start.
I went through the notes and I was like, okay, Blake forgot the first product. That's fine. But it can't blame them because it's the Innistrad double feature. And if you're like, what was that? So basically, it was a reprint set. Entire reprints of the Midnight Hunt and Crimson Vow from 2021. Now you're like, okay, so what did they do? Well, they made the cards black and white, and they put them together so it's one draft environment. That's it. I think, not to, spoil the rest of the year, but it was probably one of the most underappreciated. Well, it's not even appreciated. Nobody appreciates this product. It seemed like such a money grab just for them to be like, oh, here's 2 products that we just made. We're gonna reprint all the cards, and yeah. So this would have been cooler if they maybe threw in cards from previous Innistrad sets, really give it that horror theme. But it It really fell flat, and not a lot of people liked it, myself included.
Yeah, that's what I heard. The reception on it was not the best. Yeah, I don't really have too much to add to that.
Well, if we're moving on to the next product, talking about another dud, kind of.
Sure, you could say it's a dud. I think it's a little bit better than what we just talked about. It is the Commander Collection Black. So, if you remember, in years past, WotC has been releasing these Commander Collections, and so far it's been one color at a time. I think we have green previously, and so now we have black. It includes, how many cards is it? 6? 7, 8, 9? Like about 10? Yeah, 10 cards. So you got Liliana, Heretical Healer. So, I should clarify, these are all reprints, asterisks to that. So you got Liliana, Heretical Healer, like that Liliana that's a flip planeswalker. Ghoul Caller Gisa, which is like an old school mono black commander. You have Phyrexian Arena, commander staple right there. You have Ophiomancer, which makes snake tokens, and this is the first time we've ever actually gotten the snake token from this card. Up until now, people have just made proxies of it because it's never existed. WotC's never printed it, so now we have it. Let's see, there was also Reanimate, Toxic Deluge, Soul Ring, and a Command Tower. All cards are kind of black themed. Yeah, I agree with what you said earlier, Guy. It was a little bit of a dud, but I know people who bought this product and have put a couple of these reprints into their commander decks. I'd say about half of them are good, quote unquote, like the Soul Ring or the Command Tower, or the Reanimate, the Toxic Deluge. Maybe some of them aren't so much, like the Liliana Planeswalker, like the Ghoul Caller Gisa. What do you think?
I mean, to say, I guess, that it's a bad product might be a little too harsh. A lot of these cards are good. They are what we would consider commander staples. However, when you compare it to the product we got for green back in, I want to say 2020.
I think it was the previous year, yeah. Or
it came out with the first Commander Legends, around that time. So it was very end of 2020, and we were getting this very early 2022. So it's about a year, but when you compare it to that one, Commander Green, where you got Sylvan Library, Worldly Tutor, one of its first modern reprints, and you could get it in foil. It's kind of why didn't you throw maybe either Demonic Tutor in here?
Or Vampiric Tutor?
Something like that, where it's just just give it a little more of a boost.
Yeah, you're right. Commander Collection Green came out in 2020.
There may be a lot of product, but I can almost remember when it all came out, except for Strixhaven. Yeah, and even though it's cool that the snake got printed, it's kind of also did you only print that because of Ophiomancer? And
I think so.
Yeah, so it's could have replaced that with, again, Demonic Tutor or something that would have better fit, or been better, given this a little more oomph.
Yeah, I didn't bother to calculate the monetary value of Collection Green versus Collection Black. Maybe I'll do that in the future, in future year reviews, but for now, I did not do that.
I mean, let's get to, then, the first RC update, which coincides just shortly before our first big set, Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, but no changes. They mentioned that there are cards like Torgrid, Dockside Extortionist, and Thassa's Oracle that they are keeping an eye out for, but not in the sense that they need in banning right now.
I'd say that's kind of a lot of the announcements that we'll see throughout this year. They'll say here's these cards that we're keeping an eye on, unofficially. None of them are getting banned. I don't think any cards got banned this year.
Nope.
I'll double check as we go through.
Alright. So why don't you lead us in to the future with
Alright.
Kamigawa.
This is the first real set of the year, and it's Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. Came out mid-February, and I'll just say right at the beginning, I think this was pretty well received. Okay, I think I'm getting ahead of myself. I won't say that yet. So, Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, we returned to Kamigawa. And so there are no reprints really, or no notable / meaningful reprints, as I like to say. However, we do get 32 new commanders. And Guy and I are going to be talking about like what we think are the most popular commanders or most popular like main deck cards. And EDH Rec is not perfect, but it's a helpful website overall. Just kind of take what their numbers are with a grain of salt and critical thinking. So that being said, what does EDH Rec say were the top 8 most popular commanders for this set? I'd say there was Ishin, 2 Heavens as 1. It's the Mardu Human Samurai that basically doubles your attack triggers for your creatures. That one was pretty darn popular.
Yeah.
Almost twice as popular as the next one, which was Satoru Umezawa, and that basically gave your things ninjutsu, your creatures ninjutsu, and it was moderately popular. Then there was, what else was there? Oh, I thought this card was neat. There was Hinata Dawn Crowned, which is kind of like a reverse Zada in terms of targeting each target versus your opponent's things. It's kind of a weird deck and involved playing a lot of cards that I had never heard of before, and I was really intrigued and awed when I saw all these deck techs coming out for it. I'm like, oh, I've never even heard of that card. And that's the sort of phenomenon I like to see when new Commander comes out, where it's like, hey, here's this card that's been printed for years, but it's seen almost no play because it's super niche. I think that's awesome.
I definitely agree.
Yeah, next up there was Light Paws, Emperor's Voice, which is sort of like this mono-white fox that is a aura-based Voltron deck, kind of. Searches up auras from your library as you play auras. And I am not going to go through each and every one of these because that would take too long, but I think those are the 4 most notable ones. There was also the Human Frog Bant enchantment deck, like Tatsunari, Toad Rider. I saw a lot of people online talking about the rat pilot called Greasefang, about making a Orzhov Vehicles deck. I saw people kind of talk about the Tameshi Reality Architect, where it's this sort of highly political Azorius deck. Oh yeah, then there was like Jin Gataxian Progress Tyrant, which is like in the cycle of these surprise return of the Praetors, doubling something of your own and having the effect of your opponents. So we saw a new Jin Gataxian. So all of these are honestly pretty cool. I was pretty stoked by all of them. I'm sorry if I took too long. I liked this set. I like a lot of the cards in this set.
I mean, it's a great start to the year. I remember being very excited, getting all these cool cards, going down to the 99, got the cycle of legendary lands, which all had a channel ability.
Yeah, this was probably the highlight of this set, dude.
This was probably the highlight of the year, if I'm being honest.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So yeah, you had Boseiju Who Endures, obviously one of the most talked about cards of the year. You had Odawara, Soaring City, Takunama, Abandoned Mire, Silkenzon, and then a new Aiganjo. Each one in one of the respective colors of Magic. I would say that these are almost instant staples for any deck that's kind of splashing colors in any of these. If you're running a monocolor deck, I don't see why you wouldn't want to run your respective color. Even in 2-color decks, might be a case-by-case scenario, but just having a free ability that you can use for your channel, pretty good. But then for other 99 cards, we had Farewell, which was a mass exile type card. We had Secluded Courtyard, which is I would say that this is one of those type of cards that we see almost in every set, where they're trying to make it relevant to Commander and giving you color fixing abilities.
Yeah.
I guess even though none of these made the top Commanders, we did get a new cycle of dragons. 2 of the most notable ones from EDH Rec are Atsushi, the Blazing Sky, who's the red one. And they all had 2 abilities that you could choose from when each one died. So
Mm-hmm.
For example, at Sushi said, like, exile the top 3 cards of your library. Until end of your turn, you may play those cards. Or you could create 3 treasure tokens. Yep. Sorry, were you going to say something?
I wanted to comment just really quickly how the black one was like being compared to Kakusho, the Evening Star. Just how that card long ago used to be banned in Commander, and how like the black one in this set is a completely different card in a lot of ways, and how it's not as powerful. And it's just kind of interesting to see how the format's like. It's just a moment for me to be like, wow, the format's really changed. Like Kakusho, the Evening Star, used to be banned, and then it slowly got taken off the ban list, and now here we have sort of like a reimagining of it in a sense, and it's like not even a problem. Or you didn't really hear anyone in the community like yelling and asking for it to be banned like you hear like in almost every set. So I don't know, it was just kind of an interesting phenomenon for me to see.
Yeah, I would agree. I guess the other highlights just to mention, so we had the return of Ninjutsu, we had the return of Channel, we also got Reconfigure, which was a really cool ability that we saw on artifact creatures where they could become equipments. So you were able to pay a similar cost to what you would pay for like equip, but then like the creature would turn into an equipment. So pretty neat, and I think that was a very well received mechanic. So overall, all these mechanics were very well received. I know,
which usually isn't the case.
Yeah,
for Commander players. Yeah,
flavorfully, everyone really liked the revamped Kamigawa. Definitely a home run start for your premier sets in the beginning. And that doesn't go without to say that they are continuing the trend of adding 2 commander decks to every set. So,
yeah.
We got a blue-white vehicles deck and a red-green modified deck. Which, if you don't know what that means, that just means that a creature is modified when it has either counters or has equipment or auras. So the top 4 most popular one are Ghost Shintai of Life's Origins, who is a legendary enchantment creature Shrine. So we finally got the true Shrine commander that we've been asking for. And like a lot of people were excited about that. We got Shorikai Genesis Engine, who is a big vehicle who can be your commander. It's kind of one of the first times that we've seen not a creature and not a, I guess backgrounds come later, but it's one of the first times where it was like a special exception.
Yeah, it's a really interesting design, and the various combos and cards you can put into it are just very interesting to me. It's the mech looking commander.
Yep.
That's how I describe it to people.
Yep. Shishiro, the Shattered Blade, who was the modified commander, was also pretty popular. Then you also have Katori, Pilot Prodigy, who was the other face commander of the 2 decks.
Yeah, I'll be honest, it was really only Ghost Shintai and Shorikai that I heard people talk about, and then it was kind of a drop-off. I didn't hear too many people talk about this Snake Samurai or Moonfolk Pilot, but that's okay. There's still people who love them.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at the EDH rec numbers, there's like almost a 5,000 difference between Shorikai to Shiro, who, then goes down quite a bit.
For the main deck of these commander decks, there was only really one card that I wanted to talk about. I thought was worth the interest.
Yeah, I'm looking at this now, and I'm like, I really don't see any of these cards ever.
I just wanted to quickly mention Swift Reconfiguration because it's a potential combo piece with the
Devoted Druid?
The Druid that removes -1, and like you just make infinite mana because this is a 2-card combo where like this is only a single white mana and you can play it at flash speed.
Yeah,
it's not the best, most powerful 2-card combo, but it's one that in that color combination of like Selesnya, if like say you're limited to that color identity, it is one of the more efficient like infinite mana combos, for example. So that's why I just wanted to briefly mention it. None of the other cards I thought were worth talking about.
Yeah, I do remember there being a lot of talk around Swift reconfiguration because it was a very interesting way for getting white removal, but yeah, it did seem like it was just more of a combo piece. But I don't think I've ever seen it used in any other way than being a combo.
Right. I mean, I don't want to go... I could probably talk like for another 10 minutes about like my thoughts on auras as removal, but that, again, that's like its own separate conversation.
Yeah. Alright, so that's the first big set of the year. I feel like there was kind of a little low after that, because up next was the Streets of New Capenna, which was teased to be a new plane that happened in a giant city where it is run by 5 demon mob bosses, and each of the demon mob bosses is a different 3-color pairing. But then also to go along with that, just the second update from the rules committee, but again, no changes.
Yeah, no changes, just keeping an eye on Dockside Extortionist. Whatever your feelings are for Dockside Extortionist, you probably think it's a pretty strong card. Yeah, it's a little bit divisive of a card. I'm not going to get into that on this podcast. That's not the scope of this episode tonight.
Yeah.
Yeah, Streets of New Capenna. I was kind of intrigued by this set. I was not really certain about this theme. Like, when I saw, like, Kamigawa and seeing, like, sort of cyberpunk-ish, like, futuristic Japan setting, like, I'm like, alright, like, I vibe with this, like, the way they handled this, and how they did this, and then Streets of New Capenna came out. I personally was not like, I feel the exact same way, like, I'm super high on this. I was still positive about it. I just don't think I personally vibed with it as much, but I know a lot of people really enjoyed the aesthetic. A lot of people liked, kind of the gangster, mobster aspects of it and that kind of atmosphere and mood. There weren't like any reprints. There were 19 new commanders. I was shocked to see that the most popular of which was a mono white deck. It was, I'm going to butcher this name, Giada? Font of Hope?
Or
Giada, thank you.
I think, actually.
Yeah,
I said that confidently, and now I'm like, I don't think I'm right
doubt
either.
Yourself. Yeah, but it's just a mono white angel that sort of incentivizes you to play other angels, and actually makes mana for angels. So that's pretty neat. I also saw people very excited about Jetmir, where it's this Naya cat demon that really incentivizes you to play a whole bunch of creatures, and the more creatures you have, the more buffs that those creatures will gain, and so you just like play a whole crap ton of creatures and just like mow down your opponents. There are other commanders in this set, but to be honest, I did not see them talked about or played nearly as much. That being said, EDH Rec indicates that like all of these top 8 commanders from this set are all around the same number of decks built for them, sort of in the 5,000 to 2,000 range. It's pretty evenly spread, so I'm surprised to see mostly that mono white commander and Jetmir played much more and talked about much more, at least online. So maybe that's a good example of how you hear from the community talk about narrow certain cards, but in the actual real world, it's much more evenly distributed and well liked. I don't know. Do you have any input on that?
I guess I'm not terribly surprised that Giada is the most popular, just because I feel like angels are a very popular tribe, and
that is true.
She is the best angel commander at this point. She's cheap, she adds mana to play angels, and she buffs her angels. I don't know what more you could ask from an angel commander, especially in white.
Like, I remember one of my first decks that I ever built was a Boros Angel deck, and it's changed over the years to be something completely else, but I think it kind of speaks truth to, new players tend to gravitate towards tribal decks, and I think, as you said, Angels is probably one of the more popular tribes to build around, and this is arguably one of the best to do that, even if you are limited to building a mono white deck. Maybe that limitation's a good thing. I see what you're saying.
Yeah. We did get some pretty interesting main deck cards too. So one of the most popular ones being an Offer You Can't Refuse, which is just a counter target non-creature spell for 1 blue mana. The downside is that your opponent gets 2 treasures, but most of the time people would rather them get the 2 treasures than counter the spell, apparently. So pretty good. Very efficient. We also have Professional Facebreaker, who has gone on to be a very strong card, where you can turn treasures into card advantage, or you can also make treasures based on the number of opponents you attack. And then the other highlight, I guess, is that we finished off the Triumph sequel, though these aren't Triumphs anymore. It's the, I guess there's no, word that goes between all 5 of them, but they are
But they're basically triomes. They're 3 colors.
Yes, they are the headquarters for each of the mob bosses. So, for example, you have Rafine's Tower, which is Plains, Island, Swamp. So you would have Mountain, Forest, Plains for another one, Swamp, Mountain, Forest, Forest, Plain, Island, and then the last one would be... Oh, It's still also listed in the top 10 cards. Island, Swamp, Mountain. So, nice. There you go. But yeah, interesting. I see a comment here, Blake, about... Oh, maybe I'm cutting you. Maybe I'm getting ahead of myself. What were you about to say?
I just want to say, I personally always forget about the fact that how popular lands are when sets are released. And I think it's a good reminder for myself, not everyone is like me and tries to build, perfectly optimized mana bases. Because mana bases are, I would argue, have the potential to be some of the most expensive parts of building a commander deck. And people really need to budget how they build their decks, especially if they would like to build a whole bunch of decks. And so it's a good reminder for me that, these are, more budget-friendly options. That being said, I think some of them are, still $5 to $10, but, that's within a lot more people's budget than, say, a dual land, right?
Yeah, I agree. Giving the players more options for lands when they aren't going to be reprinting some of the more expensive lands is nice.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
did you see my next note? Yeah.
Yes, this is what I was getting to. I was going to say,
I have a bone to pick with the community.
most people freaked out about Bootlegger Stash, but it's not even in the top 10 cards used.
It's not even in the top 10? What, guy? What are you talking about? Bootlegger Stash is the most OP card, and it needs to be banned 5 years ago, before it was even printed. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
It's broken.
So this set did cause a lot of commotion with Treasure, which we followed up with our own episode, and I think is one of our better episodes, personally. But there was just a huge increase of Treasure cards in EDH, so we made an episode talking about, okay, there's a lot of reasons why they are using Treasures, but I think we're going to see a decline in Treasure cards for the rest of the year, and we did. Mm-hmm. And it's not like WotC took that feedback immediately and adjusted. It's just because people preemptively freaked out for no reason.
Yeah. And I have listened to numerous interviews and talk shows with certain WotC staff members that have said that WotC is cutting back on the number of treasures that will be reprinted, or treasure cards that make treasure tokens going forward, given that reaction, and I think that's probably for the better.
I agree.
I look at Dockside Extortionist and other cards, but honestly, go to our Treasures episode that we did a while back. I agree. I think that was a really good episode, and I enjoyed that one.
Mm-hmm. And also, again, continuing the trend, but also not continuing the trend, there were commander decks. However, this time, instead of 2, which is the typical number we'll see, we got 5. And each one had to do with the different, is it gang? I guess mob boss?
Yeah, I think mob boss,
Yeah.
I suppose.
So we got 5. We got Henzi Toolbox Tor as the most popular, who gave all your creatures Blitz, which was an ability that could reduce the cost to cast your creatures, but then they got haste, but you would have to sacrifice them at the end of the turn. We got Angelo, the Painter, who gave your cards Casualty 2, which meant if you sacrificed a creature with power 2, you could copy the spell. Then, I guess the third most popular, and I'm kind of surprised by this, is Tivit, Seller of Secrets, who I think is a Council's Dilemma type commander.
It is. Mm-hmm.
So that is neat, because I don't think we've ever seen something like that before, where we're focusing on a really niche mechanic that's only come out a couple of times.
Yeah, and I also want to add, I won't go into the details exactly, but I know that certain prominent EDH figureheads have talked about this commander, and how it's actually arguably one of the most powerful Esper commanders that currently exists. So I won't go into the details about that. I think they made like an episode about it. But yeah, that was just kind of my 2 cents on this card.
Oh, very interesting. We also got, I'm not even gonna pronounce.
Yeah,
this
I'm not
next
sure we
one.
really need to read the rest of these. Honestly, I think all of these.
How could you dismiss the Beamtown Bullies, Blake?
Oh yeah, that was gonna be my one exception. You got me.
Yeah. So this was a Jund commander who basically wants to give your opponents creatures, but most oftentimes you're giving your opponents bad creatures that you would never run unless if you had a way to give it to someone else.
Yep.
So very, very cool.
I think the perfect example for me is when Beamtown Bullies got spoiled, a card called Hellcarver Demon shot up in price, because it's again one of those cards that nobody really plays. This new niche commander comes out that fully utilizes this card, and it's really good in that deck, and so it shot up in price. And I think that's really cool, because at face value, Hellcarver Demon, God, I'm having a hard time pronouncing that name, as at face value a really terrible weak card, but in this specific deck it does work, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And then in terms of main deck cards, we had really, I think Smuggler's Share is the big winner here.
Yeah,
it's a white enchantment that at the beginning of each end step, you get to draw a card if your opponent drew more than 2 cards. Then create a treasure token for each opponent who had 2 or more lands enter the battlefield under your control this turn. So it's just another one of those cards that's really good for white, because it's about the catch-up mechanic and making sure that none of your opponents are getting too far ahead without you kind of also getting to tax them in a way.
Exactly. And that's kind of what we need. WotC's been listening to the community that's been saying we need more white cards that are good for Commander, and I think they are continuing to slowly deliver, and I think we'll talk about that at the very end of the episode. But moving right along, we got a lot to talk about. We have out in June, Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate. And this one was kind of a doozy. It had this one is the first main set that actually had a bunch of Commander relevant and meaningful reprints. You got stuff like Jeska's Will, very expensive, 3 visits. Holy crap, that was expensive for so long. You got Reliquary Tower, Lightning Greaves, Skull Clamp, all of the Battle Bond lands, quote unquote, like Morphic Pool, Luxury Suite, Sea of Clouds, Spire Gardens, Bountiful Promenade.
All the original Battle Bond lands. Yeah, because we did get the second set, but this is the first time we've seen meaningful reprints of the originals. And I think that's really good, because these cards are also, if you're using 2 colors, you probably should be running these. These are almost the best dual lands you can get without having to pay for a real dual land.
Yep, exactly. And then they also had a reflecting pool just to kind of top it off. So overall, great reprints. This usually doesn't happen. And then on top of all these new great reprints, we also got 69 new commanders. Plus backgrounds, which is...
What's a background?
What's a background? How do I fucking explain backgrounds? You know, there's like this commander card that says like choose a background, and then there's this. I think backgrounds is technically
It's a subtype of enchantment.
Thank you. Yes, it's a subtype of an enchantment, and they all basically say commander creatures you control get blah 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 blah, and it's usually some sort of buff or strengthening ability to your commander creatures, whatever it may be. It might be like affecting its attack and defense. Why am I thinking in terms of Yu-Gi-Oh? It may be increasing like its synergy with instants and sorceries. It can do a whole variety of things that are making your commanders more powerful. In my mind, it's kind of a super duper fixed version of partner. You know, like over the years, WotC has realized, oh wow, partner is way too powerful for the commander format. We need to nerf it. So then they came out with like commander with, and then limited it to partner with just only monocolors commanders. And then now they've come out with, here's a commander, and then it says choose background, so it's like you have two commanders again. But I think arguably this is the most nerfed version, and I still think it's really cool. I want to be clear. This is really nerfed and less powerful, but I still think they are awesome and cool designs. I'll talk about backgrounds a little bit more in just a minute, but I want to talk about some of the top commanders that came out in this set. And I think the most notable one that people are probably the most familiar with is, oh gosh, how do I pronounce this? Mirim Sentinel Worm. It's the Temur, so that's green, blue, red. It's the Temur Dragon Spirit that has flying and ward 2. And then whenever another non-token dragon enters the battlefield under your control, you create a token that's a copy of it, except the token isn't legendary if it's a dragon. If that dragon is legendary, sorry. And so it's just this really cool design, in my opinion, where, you know, we have so many cool commander, dragon tribal commander decks already, like the Ur-Dragon, for example. But this is really cool in the sense that, like, hey, like, instead of doing 5-color good stuff, let's narrow your color identity and restrict the cards you can choose down to Temur. But as a way to compensate for that, for going down in color identity, you get this really cool, awesome effect. And, like, players really like that. Like, it's pretty damn popular. It's got currently almost 9,000 decks according to EDH Rec. Guy, I know that you are really into dragons. What do you have thoughts on this?
I mean, to me, this was the first time in a long time where I said to myself, this could potentially rival the Ur-Dragon in terms of most powerful dragon commanders. The Ur-Dragon has the huge upside of Eminence, meaning it doesn't even need to like hit the battlefield to have an impact. But God,
Eminence, yeah.
This just like doubles all your dragons, and we've gotten a lot of good dragons recently, so
oh yeah,
pretty good, yeah.
And then I will say that it's kind of a steep, in my opinion, it's kind of a steep drop off in terms of other popular commanders. Like the next most popular is the Captain Nethrod. I don't even know how to pronounce that. It's a Dimir horror pirate that kind of looks like that one character from Pirates of the Caribbean.
Davy Jones.
Yeah, the dude with a tentacle beard. That kind of affects the horrors, but it's way less popular with only about 4,500 decks.
I will say, like, I'm actually really surprised that the new Minskin Boo is not in this top 8 list. I feel like that's the one that I've seen most people talk about and most people play.
Because it was in this set, right?
It was in this set.
Yeah.
But you even have, like, Tasha and Elfminster as more popular commanders. So I'm kind of like, is it because there's another Minskin Boo who's 3 colors that people like more? But the red and green one is actually much better, and probably one of the better commanders that we've gotten this year, too.
Yeah, honestly, I'll be honest, I don't quite have a theory on that one. I don't think it kind of clicked with people in reality as much as maybe there was talk online.
Maybe.
There were other commanders that I thought like had sort of some interesting things, like Raga Draga being this Gruul mana dorks deck that incentivizes you to like buff up your mana dorks, quote unquote. You know, there's the Nine Fingers commander that has a bunch of like nines in the name and it kind of has an interesting effect. You know, there's Elminster and, as you said, Tasha, where it's these planewalkers that say that they can be your commander, which is more of a design space that WotC's been exploring over the years. You know, here's a commander, here's a planeswalker, and also it can be your commander. And I think that's a great way of kind of appealing to all those commander players that yell at the rules committee to change the rules to where like all planeswalkers should be legal as your commander. And so sort of what's ended up happening is the rules committee has said no, but we'll tell WotC about it, and WotC's been like, alright, well here's these planeswalkers that can say they can be your commanders. And that way you're not introducing a bunch of old planeswalkers that were never designed with commander in mind, and I won't get down the 30-minute conversation I have about that. Let's move on.
Yeah. So, in addition to just like most popular commanders in general, there are some pretty popular legendary creature background pairings. So, the first one being Barakos, Party Leader, and Folk Hero. Part of me thinks that this one's most popular because you have the party deck come out. So, in addition to the Baldur's Gate set, there were 4 decks that also came out. This is one of the pairings that you could run right out of the box, so I feel like a lot of people probably went with it, and Folk Hero is one of the better cards that you could have as a background, allowing you to draw a card for like whenever a creature enters the battlefield that shares a creature type with your commander. Or something to that effect.
I mean, it says commander creatures you own have whenever you cast a spell that shares a creature type with this creature, draw cards. This ability triggers only once each turn. So yeah, as you were saying, I think it's kind of reminiscent of like, Kindred Discovery, where it's sort of like, alright, just play a tribal deck basically and like draw cards, and that card's pretty popular, and that's a 99 card or a main deck card, and yeah, totally makes sense. I think, you know, here's all these backgrounds you can kind of mix and match between and make all these different cool and interesting decks. I think that's honestly the coolest thing about this type of design, is where there's so much potential to mix and match and make a whole variety of decks.
Yeah, and I mean, that's very true, because when we look at these numbers, they're actually pretty low. But considering that we had, you know, I forget how many exactly, but like maybe it's like 20-some commanders and 20-some backgrounds. Just we'll use that as kind of like a base reference point. That's 400 different type combinations that you could have as a commander. So each commander has 20 different versions of it that you could run. So it really opens the diversity of what you can do. And it's nice because, yes, unlike Partner, you only have a very, very limited amount of pool that likely won't expand nearly as much as often, because Backgrounds is kind of tied into D&D. So I feel like we're like...
Yeah, so I don't know... Yeah, I don't know the next time that we're gonna see Backgrounds because of that specific reason. Maybe WotC will come up with some other design in the future that's very similar to Backgrounds and kind of like Backgrounds and partner with and partner. It does this sort of mix and matching, and who knows? Who knows what the future will bring?
Yeah.
As long as it's not broken, like the original partner mechanic, then I'm fine with it. Go nuts.
I feel like here, this is the first time where I feel like I want to talk about most of these.
Yeah, these were all
not go into
bangers.
Terrible depth, but like, you know, Black Market, so main deck cards, Black Market Connection, a very, a lot of people compare it to, what is it, Phyrexian Arena. Very
Awesome.
good. Could splash it in a lot of black decks. Decanter of Endless Water. Apparently, this is a good mana rock that says you have no maximum hand size. Add 1 mana of any color. So, like, okay, yeah, we do like our mana rocks.
Yeah, I specifically like it because it's the design space that I am happy WotC is moving in, where it's like, alright, like, the Commander format already has so many, like, 2 mana value mana rocks, and, like, 1 mana rocks like Soul Ring and Mana Vault, and then arguably has enough 0 mana value mana rocks like Mox Diamond and Mana Crypt and absurd broken shit, that it's like, alright, WotC, please design 3 mana rocks that tap for at least 1 colored mana and have some sort of upside. That way it sort of incentivizes deck builders to actually play like higher mana value mana rocks, please. And then they make cards like Decanter of Endless Water, and yeah, sure enough, like 36,000 decks. Yeah, this is great. This is exactly the kind of design that we've been asking for and that we're getting, and I love it.
Yeah. We also have Archivist of Ogma, and I'm just also going to like pair it up with Deep Known Terramancer. 2 really good, very cheap white creatures that one allows you to draw a card whenever your opponent searches your library, and another one that allows you to go get a plains whenever your opponent plays an extra plains. Neither of these are terribly expensive either. I mean, Archivist of Ogma is $14-ish. So if you don't have one, maybe try and pick one up soon, just because it also... The downside to a lot of these Boulder Scape cards is the place to reprint them is not high.
Yeah, that's true.
Yep. And then you also have like the Ancient Dragons that they introduced. So Elder Dragons...
All of them were pretty good.
I mean, when we were talking about them, it was kind of like, yeah, these are the best cards, and even... You know, we said, like, the green one's the worst one. It's still, like, you know, you put a lot of power on board. That's not a terrible thing. And, you know, it's just the variance of them is kind of what I think deters me and some other players from wanting to play them. But
sure, it's high variance. But at the same time, I know WotC staff in interviews have said, like, that's the very essence of, like, the kind of commander that they are trying to design for is high variance. You know, compared to... most of WotC designing cards through most of like the game's history being geared towards like standard and the Pro Tour and very competitive formats where you want low variance. Now WotC is designing for high variance, and so this is a perfect example where like, yeah, rolling a d20 and getting some sort of result, that's very high variance.
Yep. And I think the only other one that's like really worth mentioning at the moment is also Displacer Kitten, who is just a very strong combo piece that can be splashed in a lot of blue decks.
Yep.
Oh yeah. Good card, good kitty.
It can be pretty nutty.
So then moving on to the next big set of the year is Double Masters 2022. So back in 2020, we got our first Double Masters, which was advertised as powerful reprints. You get 2 rares a pack, or you could get like 1 rare, 1 mythic. You could get 2 mythics, but you also could get you would always get 2 foils in addition. So then you could also get one of those foils to be a rare. You could get them both to be a rare. You could get 2 mythics. You had a very good chance, or not good chance, but there was chance of like getting a lot of good cards. And this had some of the best reprints of like any set ever. Just gonna like speed run this. Imperial Seal, Dockside Extortionist, Mana Vault, Mana Drain, Cavern of Souls, the 3 original Eldrazi Titans, Allosaur Shepherd, Food Chain, Force of Negation, Crucible of Worlds, Smothering Tithe, Phyrexian Altar, Consecrated Sphinx, Damnation, Concordant Crossroads, Warrior's Oath, Teferi's Protection, Green Sun Zenith, Bloom Tenor. The list could go on for a little bit longer, but
That's a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a lot of great reprints. Holy shit.
And not only did they just, like, reprint these cards, but they reprinted multiple versions of the card, which I actually think is always a good thing, because it just puts more out there, and you can choose which art version you want. So it just increases the supply and demand, since some of these, like Imperial Seal, had only seen one real printing and then a judge promo before this. So the card was like
hundreds of
$700.
It was like $700, yeah. Like, I already happen to have, like, owned the judge promo, but, like, for the sake of, like, having, like, making it more affordable for, you know, like, the average player, like, I am so happy that this got reprinted. Like, I honestly was thinking before this got reprinted, like for probably like 2 or 3 years, like, I literally every set was just like, when are they gonna reprint Imperial Seal? It's so much money at the time. It, like, I don't know what it's worth now exactly. I'd have to look it up. But at the time, like you said, it was like $700 for either version, because it was like it had like very low print run when it was first printed, and then the next time was a judge promo, which, like, there are so few copies of, so there were just not very many copies physically of this card. It was so expensive, and so I was just like, when are they fucking reprinting Imperial Seal? Like, I'm just waiting year after year after year, and then this finally gets reprinted, and I'm like, yes.
So, also, just gonna say, but the $700 printing version that we're mentioning was the cheaper of the two printing.
Yes.
So, the other one, which was from the original print set, which was very hard to come by, was like a few $1,000s.
Yeah.
It still kind of holds that price. The Judge promo has gone down a little bit to about $350, but then now
That's
a
fine.
normal Imperial Seal could cost you about $70.
That's still expensive for a lot of players, but, like, in the time of history, that's much more affordable than it's ever been.
Very much, yep.
God. And then, like, yeah, that's just one card. There were so many good reprints in this set. Like, I feel like maybe I'll say this now instead of at the end, but at least for me, in terms of the pattern that I'm noticing when I'm doing these end-of-year reviews, it seems that most sets are focused around introducing new cards, new designs. They're not really interested in doing reprints. Like, there's exceptions, such as, you know, Commander Legends Battle for Baldur's Gate, which had a few meaningful reprints. But most sets are trying to do new things. And it's not until sets like these, where it's literally a dedicated reprint set, that you get all these amazing reprints. And so, at least for me, I think that's what I am anticipating in the years going forward, where, like, most sets aren't going to have good reprints. I have to wait for, like, the one set a year that has a shit ton of really good ones.
Yeah, Blake, and we even got 2 this year. Double Masters 2022 and Innistrad Double Feature.
Get out of here.
No, that's not trash. That set was trash.
Alright. Next up, Dominaria United, which came out September 9th. And so it did have a few meaningful reprints, specifically the Pain lands. So I think that's a cycle of lands that were really worth reprinting, and I'm glad they did. I bought them all. And then moving on, we had 41 new commanders. Some of the most notable ones were Joda the Unifier, which I was honestly kind of surprised was as popular as it was, but it was a 5-color, like, human wizard. You know Joda. I think this is the second Joda commander, and it kind of incentivizes building, like, legendary creature tribal. And then we also had Ivy Gleeful Spell Thief, which is a Simic deck that does more than just ramp and draw cards. It was this flying fairy that whenever a player casts a spell that targets only a single creature other than Ivy, you may copy that spell and targets that target Ivy. The copy targets Ivy. It's a really, like, I fumbled up the reading of that wording there just because it was such a unique design. You never really seen it anywhere else, and it sort of built this entire new deck that I never really quite seen before. Again, super cool design. Love to see it. And I think one of the big cards that people were talking about, and I definitely bought a copy of, was Shieldred the Apocalypse, which is just good, not only as a commander, but like, especially in the 99 of decks, where it's like, alright, here's another Praetor, you know the original Shieldred, here's another one, and it's only 4 mana, and it's got, like, it's 4 mana, 4/5, it's got Death Touch, and then it's still got even more upside, like whenever you draw a card, you gain 2 life, but more notably, whenever an opponent draws a card, they lose 2 life. All on like a 4 mana value like creature. So it's just a kind of a powerful punishing effect.
It's so clean and so simple, but yet so traumatic when it hits the board.
Mm-hmm. And then Shieldred is fused with a Dreadnought. That's awesome and metal as fuck.
The other thing, I guess, so we mentioned Jin-Gitaxias.
Yes.
We're mentioning Shieldred. We
Yes.
totally skipped over the fact that Urabrask was on New Capetta.
Well, I think we should... I think that sort of emphasizes the fact that nobody cares about Urabrask.
Well, I cared because I like red cards, but it was just so bad in comparison to what we've gotten before, and, you know, we've seen all 5 now at this point. We're not going to talk about Elish Norn until next year.
Yeah, that's funny that, like, literally the red one is now the one that's, like, arguably the least powerful and probably going to see the least amount of play. Because Elish Norn is pretty good.
Oh, yeah. The other thing, just to mention, so 41 new commanders just in the set, but they also had because, you know, Legendary matters when it comes to Dominaria United, but then they also had the Legends Lost, or Legends Untold, which was a set of 25 different commanders, or legendary creatures, I should say. Or, yeah, commanders. Cards that could be your commander, because there were a couple planeswalkers. But these were included in collector boosters, or in the box tucklers for Dominaria United, which also just expanded the amount of legendary creatures that we got at once. So it was one of the things that I remember most about Dominaria United is just being so overwhelmed by the number of commanders. I was like, I refuse to sit down and talk about every single one of these. I do not care that much.
And we didn't.
And we didn't. And I think that was one of the points where I was like, we need to change this, because otherwise I am going to, you know, run off a cliff.
Yeah, man. Like, I totally agree. I'm glad that we changed the structure in which we have done these episodes. We do them a little less frequently. We don't review every single set anymore. And I think that's helped, at least me, I'm not going to speak on your behalf, but at least for me, it's really helped mitigate the burnout that I was really starting to climax towards, you know, there about a year ago.
Yeah.
So it's nice, because like when we do episodes like these, like I feel like I'm bursting with things that I want to say, and I'm really enthusiastic. I'm like, yes, I want to tell everyone about this. I want to talk about it.
Yes, I agree. It's just...
It was a lot.
Yes, it was a lot.
We'll talk about this at the very end.
Yeah. So, main deck cards, though, we did get a cycle, so back to lands, but we did get a cycle of dual lands that have the basic land types, but they enter the battlefield tapped. Again, this is really clean and easy to design, but could have such a huge impact on players' mana bases, because this allows them to go find lands a little easier because of the fact that they have Mountain Forest, Swamp Forest, or whatever, Mountain Island.
Yeah, they are fetchable. They are essentially dual lands that enter tapped. So if you're fine with the fact that they enter tapped, hey, like, this is a great option for you.
It's a great budget option. Like, none of them
Yeah,
are ever going to...
like $1.
Yeah, that's probably the most they'll ever be.
Yeah, absolutely.
We did also have the Defiler cycle, which only Defiler of Vigor looks like it made it into top 10.
For a good reason. God damn, that card is fucking stupid.
I think I underestimated. I think I was like teetering between which one was the best one.
It
but
puts
now
a
I'm like,
counter on itself. Why does
I
this
know.
card exist? It's already a 6/6 for 5 mana with trample and another upside. God damn.
Yeah, it just turns. It allows you to pay life for one of the green pips. I think we said that wrong in our initial episode, but it was confusing because it was worded oddly. But this is a good card. I mean, all of them are like relatively good.
All of them are relatively good. Yeah, I'd say that. But
Except
yeah,
the black one.
screen... Defiler of Flesh? Come on, man.
I couldn't even remember its name.
Yeah, it's Defiler of Flesh. And yeah, it's hard to see that card being good when it's compared to fucking...
This
fucking,
green
no,
one.
what's his fucking name? Like Son of Yawgmoth, Crick.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's just like everyone couldn't help compare it to Crick and being like, Crick is so much powerful. Why would you ever play Defiler of Flesh? And so they're just like, whatever.
Yeah, they were like,
Yeah.
we don't need to try on this one. There's
You know what
already
else was a good
Defiler.
card? You know what else was a good green card in the set?
Oh, the monkey.
The fucking monkey, not a Toxic Extortionist, Silverback Elder. Goddamn. So, for me, I would just like, yeah. If you want my thoughts on Silverback Elder, literally just go back to the episode where I talked about this card. It's so dumb. Why does this card exist? I still think it's dumb. Like I've had it played against me a few times, and each time I'm just like, God, motherfucking damn it! This is
I need
such
to buy
a good
one.
card.
I need to buy one so badly.
Yeah, like sure it's 5 mana, but it's got all this goddamn upside, and it's just like if you get it out, especially if you get it out early, you're just like, alright, your opponents never have mana rocks, and that's like 60% of all commander decks.
So I'm a little. I feel like this card will continue to surprise me forever. But so it destroys an artifact or enchantment. It gets you a land whenever you cast a creature spell, or it gives you life. And I thought, oh, it probably gives you 2 life because that's like the average amount of life you get whenever you do something to an extent. This one says 4. And I'm just like, of course, it's doubled what I thought it was going to be because this is a good card.
I don't know if you've ever... Okay, yeah, I just looked up the card and I'm right. So, guy, just like quick tangent. Have you ever played it against someone who's played Shamanic Revelation?
No, I don't. Not off the top of my head. I'd have to look at what that card is, but...
Okay,
yeah,
so I'll read it to you.
on.
Shamanic Revelation is a sorcery that costs 3 green, so it's 5 mana. You draw a card for each creature you control, so okay, here's a green sorcery that, in any grow-wide deck, you just draw, fucking 20 cards. And then on top of that, it's got Ferocious, so you gain 4 life for each creature you control with power 4 or greater. So you, play a go-wide, creature strategy, with mildly high power. And this, the reason I bring up this card is the aspect of gaining 4 life multiple times, and I'm just like, oh my god, so because someone will be I've literally played against Park with his fucking green red Omnath deck where that one's landfall, make a 5/5 elemental token and then deal damage based on those elementals dying. Holy shit, that is one of the best burn decks in this format. Don't at me. And he plays Shamanic Revelation, and he just draws a fuck ton of cards, and he'll, literally, I'll get him down to, 7 life, and then he'll be like, Shamanic Revelation, I go up to, 70, and I'm just like, you piece of shit. And so, you can get someone down really low, and then, you just, and then they play Silverback Elder, and then they just play 5 creatures, and, gain, I don't know, fucking, 20 life, and I'm just like, ah. Alright, I'm off on another tangent. You need to cut me off and move on.
Yeah, so RC update number 3. Eyes are still on Dockside Extortionist, Thassa's Oracle. There's some discussion about untrusted games and making sure that everyone's on the same table about what you're trying to accomplish at the game and trying not to be deceiving towards your opponents, especially when you're meeting new people. And then they announced that they are going to expand the rules committee. They had done 2 rounds of interviews at this time, but had not officially announced who they were going to add. However, they did also expand the CAG by adding Rebel, Benjamin Wheeler, and Tim Willoughby. And you can kind of listen to our thoughts on that from the Q3 updates episode. But then also, The next most notable thing that happened was they then announced that Olivia Gobert Hicks and Jim LePage move from the CAG to the RC. So we now have 6 members.
Yeah, which is big. Like, that's never happened before.
Yeah,
it was kind of hinted that they were going to bring people up to the CAG, but this is the first time it's ever happened. For so long, it's been just the 4. Like, well, that's not necessarily true, but if you actually look into it, like, it has rotated a little bit in terms of Commander's entire lifespan as to who has been on the RC. But for more or less, it's been like 4 people-ish. And so for Olivia and Jim to now, quote-unquote, get promoted from the CAG to the RC, and now having the RC being more people, I think that's overall a good thing, because the RC is pretty aware that, like, you know, it's not very diverse, and that, you know, they need, like, new blood. And one of the major criticisms of the RC over the years is just the fact that, especially like not even that many years ago, but one of the major criticisms of the RC is that they're, like, quote unquote, in an ivory tower. Like, they're very out of touch with the community. And I think the Rules Committee has made many great efforts, such as updating their website and just engaging with various content creators and making a Discord and various other things that have really illustrated their desire and successful attempts to engage with the community more. I'm honestly feeling pretty positive about the future in that regard, about the RC and the CAG and the people who are listening to the community as best they can and trying to make this format as healthy as it can be.
Yeah, I mean, in the recent years, especially since when Commander's gotten more popular, there hasn't been any notable change. Like, there has been history, probably, like, prior to 2017, but since 2017, which is when I was playing, I'd say that that's kind of one of the big times that Commander started to take off more. And since then, I have not known about any other Rules Committee changes. Alright, and now, after, you know, having Olivia and Jim LePage added to the RC, we are going to then move on to Warhammer 40k Commander decks and Unfinity, the newest, not silver border. I don't really know what to say, but we'll get there in a sec, because these two sets released at the same time. They were both scheduled for earlier in the year, but got pushed back. So this was, I would say, one of the times where I felt most overwhelmed by the number of cards that were coming out, because it was like, boom, 1 week of Warhammer, boom, 1 week of Unfinity, okay, take a break, then boom, Brothers War.
It did feel that way, yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so, okay, Warhammer 40k, this was based on the game Warhammer. It's kind of a crossover. It's another one of those universes beyond, but this time it's been expanded into Commander decks. So the neat thing about these is that all the cards are Warhammer 40k themed. The other neat thing is that each of these decks had almost 40 new cards each. That's a lot of new cards.
It is, for a Commander deck.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, typically we see 15 per deck, but it kind of makes sense because they really wanted to, like, lean into the Warhammer theme, and so they had to, like, build cards specifically for the decks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because a lot of these decks, I would say, didn't quite do typical things that you would maybe expect of those colors. You know what I mean? So you had to make more cards to make the deck actually work.
I suppose. I think maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, but one thing I was amazed about these decks is there was a lot of criticism with their announcement, like, months and months before they were actually released, Like, I was definitely part of that, and I was kind of surprised with how well the community, at least the online community, like, received these decks. Like, once they were actually out and people were actually, like, reading the cards and playing with the cards, it seemed like people were pretty positive about it.
Yeah, that's definitely what I was seeing too. I think of the commander decks that came out this year, these are probably the most popular or the most well received.
Mm-hmm. I do want to say to any of our listeners that Guy and I did an in-depth episode not too long ago covering our extensive thoughts on Warhammer 40k and Infinity. The purpose of this episode is we're just going to try and hit the major points here and talk about like the most notable things about each of them.
Yeah, so any notable reprints? Well, we got Darkness, which is a black fog that hasn't seen a reprint since. And then we also got the Talisman Cycle, which I know is highly requested. And since all the cards have Warhammer 40k art, it's cool because if you really want to like bling out your deck, or if you're already a fan of Warhammer 40k, now you can like put this in your deck.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I bought these decks or any of the cards in it, and I think part of the reason is because they were kind of hard to find, like, and once, because they, like, flew off the shelves, they were pretty popular, so I think they were pretty expensive, and I think that would be, like, one downside to them.
Yes, they did sell out quickly, and then the markup price on the secondary market was not well received. So, yeah. But we got 24 new commanders, the most popular one being, and I am not a Warhammer 40k aficionado, so I am so sorry for definitely butchering these names. Garrison, Starn, Kelemorph. It's an Izzet legendary creature, Tyrannid human. Whenever a source you control deals exactly 1 damage to a permanent or player, he then deals 2 damage to that permanent or player. So it's kind of playing small burn spells that then add up over time. Then we have Bellicor, the Dark Master, which I know was very well received. It's a, blue, black, red. That is
Grixis?
Grixis, correct. It's a demon noble who cares about demons, which I know is like a popular tribe. We did get 5 other demon lords earlier this year, but I think, people who like demon tribal really got like a good number of support this year.
Mm-hmm.
This next one I saw was pretty strong and I think pretty popular. Marnus Calgar, who is basically like a white, or not a white weenie, but it's like a tokens matter deck that allows you to just draw a lot of cards. And the strong thing about this was it was any token. It didn't matter if it was creatures or anything.
That's always strong when it says like any creature, and it doesn't restrict.
Yeah. And then Magus Luca Kane, who is a Teamer commander. I honestly had to kind of like look at these cards because even though that they were well received and like I heard a lot of good things, I'm not even 100% sure what a lot of these commanders do. Just because I was like, cool, not really my thing, but I'm glad that you guys
I'm in the same boat. Format. I'm like, cool, they're not breaking the format? Alright, y'all have fun with that. I'm good.
Yeah. So, yes.
Go have fun, kids.
The Teamer one was basically like add mana to cast a spell with X in it. So I know there was like an X Matters deck. There was a Tyrannid deck, a small tokens deck, and then there was a Black Reanimation Artifacts deck, which seemed very interesting. And I think maybe vehicles matter. I'm not quite too sure, but yeah, they all seemed pretty unique and not something that they've done before for different commander decks like this.
Yeah, in my personal opinion, I was pretty in awe of all of the black cards that were for the, I believe, Necron deck. I believe that's how it's pronounced, because here's all these artifacts, but they're in the black color identity now, and they all have like these kind of strong effects. Like I think there's one that's, I guess it's technically a black enchantment that kind of makes all of your artifacts. It kind of makes all of your things artifacts, so it's kind of like Mycosynth Lattice in that sense. I'm just like, holy shit, what? Like, and then there's all these other cool designs in that deck, and I'm just like, huh, this is something that's never quite existed. It's pretty cool that it does now technically exist in like Black Border Magic for commander decks that are interested in kind of building that archetype, which hasn't really existed up until this point. So I'm like, yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And then there's a bunch of main deck cards. I feel like most of these you'll only really see when playing like against a Warhammer 40k player, just because they're so thematic to the decks. Because that's kind of the nice thing, and also the bad thing about some of these cards is that they work so well in the decks, it's kind of hard to upgrade, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that being said, I've already seen... I don't remember the name of the card, but I've already seen one of these, like, 99 cards from the Warhammer 40k decks played in a, you know, quote-unquote normal EDH deck. And I was just like,
oh, okay.
Yeah. So I've already seen it happening.
Okay. Yeah, because, like, we got Blood for the Blood God, which is this, like, giant spell that allows you to draw cards, deal a lot of damage. That's pretty cool. Exalted Flamer of Treenek. At the beginning of your upkeep, return an instant or sorcery card at random from your graveyard to the hand. Pretty good. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, it deals 1 damage to each opponent. So, yeah. Scepter of Eternal Glory. This was a mana rock, but this also allowed you to... I mean, this was a pretty good one because it also allowed you to add 3 mana of any color only if you control 3 or more lands with the same name.
So that really incentivizes you to be like a mono-color deck that runs like probably a lot of basics.
Oh yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Like maybe you can get away with it in 2-color decks, but yeah, that starts to get a little bit tricky at that point.
Yeah, you would have to be pretty basic heavy, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
And then Biotransference. I think this is the card you were referring to, Blake, where it makes your artifacts, or it makes everything artifacts. Creatures you control artifacts.
Yeah, it really reminds me of Mycosynth Lattice.
Yeah. I will say one other thing about this, but I do think all the art is pretty sick. Like, they definitely leaned into Warhammer 40k.
Mm-hmm. Overall, I'd say I'm neutral, leaning towards the positive on this, which if you had asked me a couple months ago, probably don't think I'd ever say that. So, I'm allowed to change my opinion.
How do you feel about Doctor Who coming to Commander decks?
We'll get there when we get there. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll get there when we get there.
One step at a time. One product at a time. 1 week at a time, because they come out so often. Haha.
Yep. Alright, so why don't we move on to the next product?
Sure. Next product we have, again, like we mentioned earlier, we got Warhammer 40k, and then, like, immediately, we got Unfinity out in October 7th. So, were there any meaningful reprints? Surprisingly, yes. We got the Shocklands reprinted, which, if you've played Commander for any amount of time, you know are one of the most powerful cycle of lands you can play in this format. And then they all come in these, like, really stunning, full art, like, spreads. And I think some of them, I don't quite remember the name exactly. I think it's called, like, Galaxy Foiling. They look really pretty based on all the pictures I've seen online. I've never actually seen one in person yet, or bought one myself, but they look pretty.
I do know the Galaxy Foil. Yeah, it is called Galaxy Foil. I think from some comparison images I've seen, it's the same type of foiling that they did on a lot of the original Pokemon cards.
Oh.
Which is pretty cool, because if you don't know, but like Wizards of the Coast initially made the Pokemon game, and then once Pokemon got so big, and the card game got so big, Game Freak or Monsters took over and just started making it themselves.
Damn. Alright.
But yeah, so kind of the most notable thing about Unfinity is that this was the first unset to be black bordered.
Ah, yeah.
And so, yeah. in order to now distinguish between what is a eternal legal card and what would be deemed as a silver border card originally, is now the foiling stamp down at the bottom. So if it's a typical oval, then it is, eternal legal in all Magic formats. If it has an acorn, then it is considered non-playable. Easy to follow? Some people would disagree.
Yeah, in theory.
Yeah, it is kind of hard because, if you're not playing and somebody just kind of plays one of those and you're not paying attention, you might miss the fact that that's actually not legal. And I think a lot of players are kind of confused as to which ones are and which ones aren't. So, yeah, and I also know that there were printing issues where there were some oval cards getting the acorn, and then vice versa, some acorns were getting the oval stamp. So
I didn't hear that part. Oh shit.
Yeah, because somebody got that new Jace and it had the acorn, and they're like, oh, okay, this makes more sense because this card is very complicated and annoying to play with. It really should only be a acorn card. But then they were like, nope.
You're talking about Space Jace?
Yes,
Oh
Space Belren.
Yeah, again, we've given our extensive thoughts on this product. Overall, though, I'd say I am not so high on this product. I'm in the middle, leaning towards the negative. Personally. I understand that a lot of people put in work and effort, and I recognize that. There's some great flavor text, there's some great art, the set overall, and the themes that it's trying to go for. There's a lot of things going well. It just kind of leaves a bad taste in my mouth, given the history of legality questions and with all the universes beyond, and now this, and it's oh gosh, what is this? What's happening?
I'll definitely be interested to see how they move forward and take all this feedback into future un-acorn products, because it seemed like it wasn't too well received. So will they go back to just being silver border, or will they just continue on because they've now made the commitment?
Yeah, I almost wish that they just commit to one thing or another. If this is the new direction that Wizards is going to take it. Do not be switching back and forth, and that's just going to create more confusion. If this is the new path, just stick to it, and then I think I'll be able to explain this to new players when they get into the game, and I'll be yeah, it's a little bit complicated, but because I just choose one or the other.
Yeah. So we got 30 new commanders, though technically 18 of those are acorn stamped, so they are not legal in Commander. You can make a deck with those if you want to, coordinate that with your play group, and they're okay with that. Mm-hmm. But if you take that to a typical local game store or Magic Fest, you just need to have that open discussion with your fellow players before anything happens.
Yeah, because everyone's different. You can go to an LGS, or you can be playing an online game. Just ask people hey, this is technically an acorn commander. Are you okay playing against it? This is what it does. Give a little bit of details to it. Some people will be down for it, and some people won't. And you gotta go with a pod where everyone says yes. If there's one person that says no, maybe you negotiate, that person leaves, or or you agree to play a quote unquote normal commander. Just talk it out and try to come to a consensus, because it's not worth not talking and then playing a game and then someone getting salty and angry just because y'all refuse to communicate for 2-3 minutes before a game started.
Exactly. And I also think that the likelihood of you seeing some of these is pretty low, because as we look even at the commanders that are legal, the one who has the most is Magar of the Magic Strings, with
the
about
Minotaur
700
puppeteer,
decks.
dude. Yeah.
Yep. But then as you go down the list, you see that it drops off pretty quickly. And then once you start looking at the unofficial commanders, they're not even like in the hundreds. So very unlikely that you would run into this multiple times, I would say. Or they're just not there as much.
Right. So it is going to be kind of a rare incident. When it does happen, just try and be prepared, though, in how to conduct yourself and interact with other people. Yeah.
And then even looking now at the 99 cards, you can also see there's like a trend in like how many of these cards are included in decks.
Mm-hmm.
Saw in Half is the most popular by far, with almost like 3 times as much as the second next most popular card.
I believe this and the Minotaur were some of the earliest previewed cards from this set, long before it was ever released.
You're right. That does add on to the fact that they would have been included more, and they are those 2 cards are actually, like, I would say, some of the stronger cards also in this set for eternal purposes.
Yeah, and I mean, it does. I know there was a little bit of like talk about how Saw in Half is like a combo piece with cards like Dualcaster Mage and a few others, and how this is, based on reading the actual text of the card, you'd think like, oh, this is Silver Border / Acorn type card. It's not legal. But then you look down at the little stamp, and it's like a regular oval, meaning it is totally Commander legal. And then you're like, what? Okay, so it was a bit of whiplash, and especially since it was one of the first preview cards for this set, months and months before it was released, it was really, like, jarring. At least for me.
I guess, like, the one other thing, too, about this set is stickers. If you don't know what that is, well, I don't know what to say. You must have missed quite a lot of commotion on Twitter, everywhere, actually. Reddit, a lot of the podcasts were talking about it, a lot of YouTube channels, just because it's probably the most decisive mechanic that's come out in a long time. So this is a card that has literal stickers on it that you peel off when appropriate for a card. For example, there is _goblin. When you enter the battlefield, when it enters the battlefield, you put a name sticker onto it, and then you add a number of red mana to your mana pool based on the number of vowels in the card's name. Or the sticker, I guess. So that's one example, but not going to get too heavily involved in like how they're made. I just know that, or like how they work, just because like it's very confusing, and I feel like you could dedicate half an hour to that.
And we did, kind of. Previous episode.
Yep.
Go listen to it.
But yeah, so.
Well, Guy, can I kind of interrupt you and ask, like, you've actually played that Goblin card in one of your commander decks, and so you actually use stickers. What do you think of them?
I mean, I think in a small dose, like, the number of sticker cards we have right now, fine. Like, let's kind of, if we're going to introduce new sticker cards in the future,
let's only do a couple.
Yeah, it feels kind of like partner in that way, where I don't want there to be an overabundance, just because, one, there's a lot of negative feelings around it. It's a very confusing mechanic. But as someone who looked into it, and like that's literally the only sticker card I'm considering playing, or have played, I think it's fine. But I can see how it would get really confusing if you just also had an abundance of sticker cards in your deck.
Okay. I was just kind of curious because I don't think I've ever actually asked you, now that you've been playing that type of card for a couple months now.
Yeah, and when you also look at the number of these like top cards on EDH Rec, I think only one mentions the tickets, which, then you can use for your stickers.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like in addition to probably not seeing a lot of Acorn cards, you're probably also not going to see too many sticker cards.
Fair enough.
Yep. Alright, got that one out of the way. Let's move on to Brothers War. So this is the first set of the year where we would consider there to be quite a few notable reprints. You have Diabolic Edict, Fauna Shaman, Last Zone, Painful Quandary. So it's nice to see those, especially like Diabolic Edict, which is kind of a vampiric tutor, but you have to sack a creature. But yeah. And then we got 22 new commanders in the standard set. Urza, the white-blue one, who melds into a planeswalker, is the most popular, shortly followed by Mishra, who melds into a giant Phyrexian dragon, is the next most popular.
Hell yeah.
You got Myrel, who is probably one of my favorite cards of the year. Who's like basically a Grand Abolisher, legendary creature, and then makes soldier tokens. And then we also have Gix's first iteration of a card, who is also pretty popular among the decks being built. But yeah, the Brothers War takes place back in time, like back during what will probably be like the 90s of the original Magic. They're doing this as a way of kind of explaining for a future story.
It's sort of like a prequel.
Coming up of... Yeah, like a really long flashback to give us some perspective.
Yeah, it was really cool to see all of these. Even if you're not really into the lore of Magic, you still probably know, like, Urza. Like, a very, like, prominent character in the lore. And previously, we haven't really had many Urza cards, except for the mono blue one, which is super strong and powerful, so it's kind of cool. And there was a lot of backlash to that card design, so WotC kind of was like, alright, let's tone it down. Like, let's make it blue-white and make it a little bit less powerful. And then we also got another character, Mishra, who's really important to the lore, and you probably have heard of. There's been one other Mishra before, but nobody really played it because there was only really one way to play it, because you had to play these really jank-ass weird cards, and it did really dumb, weird things, and you had to be really knowledgeable about the rules to play and pilot the deck properly. So I'm really excited to like see, oh, it's a Mishra commander that the average person can actually play. Like, you don't need to spend thousands of dollars on these super niche cards just to make your commander work.
Yeah, that is pretty nice.
Yeah.
And I think overall, players were pretty stoked about this.
Like, the return of Meld was really cool. Like, I don't think anyone was really expecting that. I think people were expecting, okay, this is the artifact set. And we did get a lot of artifacts. But no one was really expecting the return of the Meld mechanic.
Yeah, I would not have put that on my 2022 bingo sheet.
That's why we never win. Come on.
Yeah. And then, I guess, looking at main deck cards, I didn't even realize that this was probably the most popular card, but it is a land.
It's a land,
as we kind of already talked about, lands are popular. Demolition Field, so you sack it for 2 mana, destroy target non-basic land and opponent controls, then they search their library for a basic land, put it onto the battlefield, then shuffle. And then you also get to find a basic land, so you destroy... I mean, that's pretty good, actually. Might have to think about that.
Yeah, it's sort of in the small sort of like card pool of strip mine, wasteland type of effects. Like, obviously WotC's never going to print cards that powerful again, so they make slightly like nerfed versions, and so this is one of them. And you know, it's more budget friendly, and due to the fact that it doesn't completely like screw up your lands and your opponent's lands completely, I think it's more socially accepted than, say, like strip mining somebody like three goes because you got like a Zusa and like a Crucible of World or something. Oh, that's rough.
Yeah.
I was surprised by this next card, which is Lauren of the Third Path. It is like a white human creature card that's only 3 mana. It's got vigilance. It's a 2/1. You can tap it so that you and target opponent each draw a card. So it's like card draw in white. But it also can, as it ETBs, you can destroy up to 1 target artifact or enchantment, which is kind of shocking because that sort of effect on this sort of body is more or less on Reclamation Sage, a green creature of about the same stats. And so it was sort of surprising to the whole community and like, what? This ability is kind of shifting into white? Whoa, okay. Everyone was really high on this card, not only as a commander, but especially in the 99, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, we do have cards like Disenchant, but
it's not on a body.
Right, it's not on a body, and also this body has another upside to card draw. So I think this is pretty cool. I feel like I overlooked a lot of these cards because of just how many came out during this time, and now I'm kind of like, oh, maybe I'm going to run this. Maybe I need to include this. I'll definitely buy a copy, considering how cheap it is.
Mm-hmm. I think a lot of cards in this set, I think we'll see in the main deck. We also got Awaken the Woods, which is a green sorcery, like where X is part of its cost, where you like pay a whole bunch into X, and then you create a whole bunch of 1/1 green forest dryad land creature tokens. So basically, you're gonna trigger any landfall deck a whole bunch, and it's gonna be dumb in those kinds of decks. You got Portal to Phyrexia, which is a like 9 mana value artifact, so it's just like super expensive artifact to cast, but it's got a really cool effect where it's like when it enters the battlefield, each opponent has to sacrifice 3 creatures, and then at the beginning of your upkeep, you put one like target creature in an opponent's graveyard into your battlefield, which is a strong effect. You also got like Liberator, Urza's Battlethopter, which can be a commander, or in the 99, you basically like, if you ever played against Shimmermere, pretty good card. You know, it would make it even better if you gave it flying and you gave it the ability to also flash in colorless spells, and it also grew as you cast those things. Ridiculous. I can't believe they made this card.
Yeah, I mean, Park, our friend, has already played this deck, and I was like, God, this is so dumb.
I knew the moment this card was printed, he was like, because he's built like a colorless commander deck, and he's changed the commanders a little bit over the years. It's been like some of the like Eldrazi Titans, mostly the Kozileks, and then this got printed in like, alright, take out Kozilek, put this Liberator in, and now it truly is like every opponent's turn is also my turn because of Liberator, and it's like, oh my god, this deck is so strong, and it's like, this is why you play instant speed interaction, and then even then sometimes it's not enough, and it's like, oh my god, this, oh.
Yeah.
It's good.
It's good. It's good. I'm excited to play against it again, just to like, yeah. It's an interesting deck. Yeah. It's very combo heavy.
I could talk about more 99 cards. There were a lot of cards in this set, both as the commander and the 99, that I really liked. So I guess you can probably tell by my tone, I was very positive about this set. I loved it.
Yeah, especially I feel like coming off of Warhammer and Infinity, 2 sets we were not high on, this felt like
a breath of fresh air.
I was like, okay. Yeah, because like, you know, another one of the popular 99 cards that I think most white decks are now going to be running, Myrel, Shield of Argive.
Yeah. I think one of the only critiques I really had of this was the fact that there's a card called Titania, Nature's Force. Titania is a character in the lore that people are pretty fond of. We have another Titania commander. I think we have 2, actually. Because there was another Titania in this same like lineup of products. But I think this specific Titania, the Nature's Force one, as I vaguely understand, it was kind of in a product that like, I believe it was in the commander decks, and like then it was only sometimes in them. Maybe it was in the boosters. It was just very hard to get.
So
do you know the full details?
So they do this now with every set. In the collector boosters, there are 8 cards reserved for commander products that can only be found in the collector boosters. And so it's kind of like, for example, Urza and Mishra were the face commanders. Between them, you have all colors represented except green.
Right.
So, in this product, the collector boosters, they have a few more green cards that you can get for commander because there aren't any in the commander decks.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for clarifying that. Because I know a lot of the talk has been like, oh, Titanium Nature's Force, there's only 272 decks on it, according to EDHREC.com. Well, so it must not be popular. Well, at the same time, you could also say it was very hard to physically access this card, therefore people really didn't put eyes on it, therefore people didn't really build it. And so, it's like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? And it's like, I think it's the latter. So that's my only small nitpick of it. That's my only, putting the cart before the horse. That's my only small nitpick of this set. Overall, I'm very positive, very happy about it. Love it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I had a similar reaction when we were reviewing a set earlier this year with like Benny, the cryptic zoologist. I was like, where is this card? And it was also because it was reserved for the collector boosters.
Yeah. What is it? Root Path Purifier? That's a super cool design. Like the fact that like your lands you control and land cards in your library are basic. That's a super cool design. I know Gavin's kind of explained why.
I did forget about that card.
Yeah, I know Gavin has explained why this is a great card as it is, and it would actually be a bad card if it was Commander, which a lot of people were asking for, because then it removes the very charm and essence of this. Because if it was a Commander, you just do the exact same thing every time. You'd probably just go get Dark Depths combo with Thespian Stage, and then it kind of ruins like the whole like goal of the card design in the first place. And so that's kind of a cool little side story. But I'm getting into the nitty-gritty details. Sorry, please stop me. Move on.
No, you're fine. So yeah, we did get 2 commander decks. We got another Mishra commander deck, and we got another Urza deck. The neat thing about these was all these cards were printed in the old border.
Oh yeah.
So you got a lot of classic cards that, like, I think Skull Clamp, a lot of the artifact lands, they got retro frame borders. Very cool. I know a lot of people kind of like that. And so if that's your jam, like, I'd pick those up sooner than later, because I guess there is the chance that they could do that again, obviously, considering they've already kind of done that with other products. But, you know, you don't know when they're going to come. And so if you want them, get them soon.
Get them while they're hot. All right. Do you want to move on to the next set with me?
Oh, my God. So this is the second to last set. And I'm going to be honest, I have definitely not, like, took a terrible deep dive into this one. So, yeah, lead the way.
Yeah, so this is Jumpstart 2022. It came out December 2nd, so about 20 days ago as of time of recording. And so there were 2 meaningful reprints. There was Rhystic Study and Avenger of Zendikar, both pretty well-known Commander staples. But moving on.
Oh, well, hold on. You also have Karn Liberator. Or no, Karn Liberated.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah, I do know that one because his price dropped pretty significantly, so I did pick up a copy.
Alright, thank you for stopping me. That's true. See, like, there's just so much product I missed something, eventually. Alright, but there were 14 new commanders. There was the monkey Kaibo Uktabi Prince, that's how you pronounce it. And, you know, it's a cute monkey, like, how can you not love him? It is technically a green-red color identity. You gotta always read the rules text. Then the next most popular commander was Preston the Vanisher, which I saw a number of people kind of interested in because, you know, it's this rabbit that is messing with flicker effects and gives you value for, like, flicker effects, arguably. So there was some interest there. I'm going to be honest, there was a pretty, like, at least in terms of internet speak, it was pretty steep drop off after that. I mean, there were like 12 other commanders, but not nearly as much being talked about those.
Yeah, I mean, this is the newest product, so
Yeah.
it is kind of hard to say, like, you know, which ones are going to be super popular. I feel like, you know, like, yeah, Kaipo? Is that what?
Yeah, I think that one's a safe bet, just because it's a cute monkey, and what other reason do you need besides that? Like, obviously.
Right. So, yeah, I guess, like, a little too early to tell, like, who exactly is going to make the cut, but I
mean,
then also kind of looking at, like, the main deck cards, you know, I feel like at this moment it's kind of hard to say, like, who actually will be, like, worthwhile sticking around. Yeah, good. I like your note here. People are still hyped for Brothers War, to really notice that, like, this was even a thing.
Yeah, that was the problem, I'd say, with this set was Brothers War was very well received, and people were really hyped, and there was a lot of energy and momentum about talking about the cards and building decks for it. And then these cards were announced for Jumpstart 2022, and they kind of just fell to the side because people were still hyped about Brothers War, justifiably. And so I think a lot of these got overshadowed, and, you know, they're still new, so, like, I think they're just going to be forgotten by the wayside. But, like, there's some really cool designs in here, honestly. Like, there's a card in here, what is it? Zask. It's a mono green insect that can be a commander, but it, like, one of the lines of text on it says, like, you may play lands and cast insect spells from your graveyard. So playing lands from your grave is a powerful ability, but people kind of forgot about this card just because it's been, like, shoved to the side by all these other Brothers War cards.
Right. Yeah, I feel like my take on Jumpstart 2022, and actually, you know, this isn't the newest Jumpstart, actually. So one other thing, alongside commander decks, alongside your standard, you know, packs, all that kind of stuff, they've also been releasing Jumpstart booster packs with each set, starting with Dominaria United, I believe. Basically, these will each have, like, 2 to 3 new cards for each color, and I think there's only, like, 10 packs, whereas, like, Jumpstart, like, main Jumpstart has, like, 40 different packs you can get. But yeah, so, but those are, like, I know, like, the 2 other Jumpstart products that have released this year have not been well received. Nobody has really liked them, but it does seem like this one's much better in terms of newness and cards that'll probably see the format, be played in the format. And then I would say the other thing about it is that compared to the original Jumpstart, I think we got a lot more new cards, but I think they're more niche, whereas the first one introduced a lot of generically powerful good cards.
Yeah, and I think that's for the better, right? I think it's better to have all
Oh
these
my
niche
god,
makers.
like, don't give me another outsourced shepherd. Like, do give me another outsourced shepherd, but
yeah.
I remember spending $100 on that card.
One of the issues with the original Jumpstart was just the fact that it was such a limited print run, right? Like, it sold out, like, pretty quickly. It was hard to get a physical hold of.
They did eventually print more, but it was just kind of like they couldn't keep up with the demand. It was a very well-received product, and I think this one is just as much fun. I do want to pick up some packs, because I did enjoy kind of just, like, smashing 2 packs together, make a quick deck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that's not the end of it. We got even more commander decks.
Oh my god. Okay, so the last product of the year. I guess year's not technically over if they want to announce something real quick.
It's not too late. There's
it's not gonna,
like 8 more days or so.
Okay, so starter commander decks. And you're like, more commander decks? And I'm like, yeah, more commander decks. So these are 5 commander decks, each 2 color. 100% reprints. None of these have new cards. There are some cards that have new art, but aside from that, no new cards.
Mm-hmm.
Each of them is roughly estimated to be around $20 MSRP. And these are like the most basic decks you can get someone into for Commander. Super easy to pick up, start playing, and then, once you get the hang of it, they're pretty easy to then upgrade.
Mm-hmm.
So we got blue-white Isperia Supreme Judge, you got blue-black Gisa and Geralf, red-black Cardu Doomscourge, red-green Targa World Render, and then you have white-green Amaria Soul of the Accord.
Yep.
These products are pretty new. I haven't seen too much talk about them just yet, but I did watch Prof's video, and overall he was pretty pleased with them, but I feel like still in some of these products, especially with the number of Commander decks that we're printing now, we should be still printing some of the more sought after cards, just to give, new players kind of a leg up in their collection, and especially when these cards or these decks don't have anything new, just kind of throwing them a battle bond land or something like that would make a huge difference.
Yeah, because I think I said earlier in this episode, it really seems that WotC has centralized a lot of their reprints into these like one set, like where the entire set is just reprints, and then every once in a while they'll sprinkle in a few into a set. Maybe like every so often, like you got Ristic Study and Avengers Zendikar and Karn Liberated in the Jumpstart 2022. Then you got like a few in this set and a few in that set, but then a lot of these other sets, like the entire set is just new cards. So yeah, I mean that's a whole topic for an episode. Like, where do you put reprints? Like, of what value do you try to make those reprints? That's a whole other topic. I guess the one thing I'll add about this product is, I'll say it as many times as I can, Commander Precons are one of the best ways to get someone into playing Commander. Like, Guy, that's kind of how I got you into this. That's how I've seen a lot of people get into it. You just like spend $20, give them this deck. They try it out a couple times. They realize, hey, this is kind of fun. And then they start getting more and more and more invested into the game. And then before you know it, they've built 20 Commander decks. They've invested like hundreds of dollars, and they're just wanting to talk to you about like this cool like tech card that they just found.
Like, be honest, not hundreds of dollars, like literally thousands of dollars.
Alright, so next up, we are nearing the end here, folks, of this episode, but we do want to take a little bit of time to talk about all of these secret layers that have been coming out, because don't forget,
we're going to go through every single one.
We are not.
Every single card. Go into great detail and describe to you the art of each and every single one.
Fuck that. No, we are just going to take a few minutes to say that, between all of these different products, we have all of these secret layers being announced. And so this year, I think it was about the second year in which secret layers were released, yes? And
I believe they came out originally in 2019, at the very end, and we had like a few, like very few. Then in 2020, we saw kind of an increase, and then in 2021 and in 2022, they have been
jamming them
exponentially more and more.
Yes, because this year there were secret layers numbers 80 through 150. And so when you crunch the math, I just spent like a minute or two figuring it out. That is 797, almost 800 cards for secret layers. That's a lot of cards.
Yeah.
Goddamn.
And I mean, the hard, I guess, we'd have to.
That's over
have to
2 a day if you average it.
Yes. Though some of these are you got multiple versions of mountains, most likely. You have multiple versions of different, lands, basically. So, the number might be a little off, but we're not going to go into great depth about looking that up. It's just a lot of fucking cards.
Yeah, and we're not going to list every single secret layer. I will just say that everyone's got a little bit different opinions on them. I feel like, as far as I can tell, the dislike of them has lightened up a little bit. And some of them are better than others, some are worse than others in terms of how well they're received by the general public. There's some that I've really been like, oh wow, that's a really cool idea, and the card's really cool. And then there's other secret layers that come out where I'm just like, who wants this? Like, there must be somebody, otherwise they wouldn't be printing this. But the other
the astrology lands, I need to know, like, if you bought one, please tell me. I'm just, like, astounded that they keep doing that, where it's like, oh, it's Aquarius time, it's Sagittarius time, and I'm like, oh my god.
Dude, there's a lot of people who believe in astrology. A lot of people our age.
Good for them.
Yeah, it's a little bit painful. So, I guess the one other thing I will say about secret layers before moving on is there are still issues with print quality, and there are still issues with the timeliness in which people are getting their secret layers. I think the big notable story of this year was the heads I win, tails you lose, like, sort of Commander secret layer decks. Like, it took pretty much an entire year before people got theirs, and some people still didn't get theirs.
Yeah.
That's a long time.
That was definitely an ongoing story. I saw it many a times on Reddit. But, yeah.
And if you live outside of the US, you have to pay all these tariffs and, like, additional, like, port fees, and it's just...
basically $100 extra is what I've seen. Yeah. If you live outside of the North Americas, it's basically $100.
Yeah.
To get your product.
So, it's still got issues. Still not the biggest fan of it.
Yeah. I mean, I've bought a couple, mainly just because there's, like, a card or two that I like in them, and I've kind of come to learn, like, if I do really want that card, I might as well just wait until it hits secondary market. If I buy it early enough, it shouldn't be too expensive, but it's just sometimes cool to, like, you know, get, like, a reasonably okay price, because if you're paying... like, I bought one for Elvish Spirit Guide, I bought one for Mystic Remora. I did buy the Junji Ito ones, just because I was like, oh yeah, I love this artist, this is one that I could definitely get 100% behind. You could put any card in there, and I would have bought it.
I will say...
it could have been...
sorry, continue.
It could have been 4 Swamps, and I would have bought them.
I will say one of the major upsides I've been hearing about the Secret Layer line is the fact that, you know, they are doing these quote-unquote niche themes with all these. Like, so for example, let's say the Junji Ito cards for the secret layers. Well, now every quote-unquote normal person who just kind of knows of Junji Ito and is a fan of that, now they see, oh, there's this, like, thing called Magic, and they, like, had Junji Ito, like, do the art for this. I like Junji Ito. I'm gonna start looking into Magic, and I've apparently heard, like, many stories of, like, people, like, which is arguably, like, one of the main goals of WotC, where it's like drawing people in who don't play Magic and getting them to play Magic, having them start being a customer base. And so, from a business perspective, I get it. I get why they're doing it, like, because apparently it's successful on that dimension.
Yeah. It's cool because, you know, they can really focus in on a particular subject without having to, like, go all in on one, like, major set.
Because that's a lot of time and resources of the design staff and many other department teams that, you know, it might not be worth it. It could be a huge bomb. So it's Secret Layer as a way of really, you know, mitigating the risks while still trying to maximize, like, the potential benefits.
And it's mostly print to demand, so it's not like, you know, they print a bunch and then, oops, we have like 1,000 extra copies.
And now game stores have all of this inventory that they can't sell, and then it's really screwing them over, and then they go under. So, like a lot of things in life, it's kind of a mixed bag.
Right. Though, speaking of, I guess, just secret layers, there are two ones that we're going to mention in particular, just because they were more notable than the others. The first one, and this is kind of hard to explain because they both have very similar names. So there's the Magic 30 Anniversary 30-pack kit, which had 30 cards, one card from each
year.
Each year that Magic's been out, thank you. And each one also kind of took inspiration from a style that had already been made in different secret layers. So I know, like, the very first one, Shivan Dragon, goes back all the way to the person who did the Kaleidoscope secret layer in the first drop of secret layers, where, you know, you had the Dragon, Scarecrow King, Sliver Hive Lord, or something. But yeah, so 30 cards, 30 packs. All cards were determined. You were going to get all 30. Whether they were foil or not was kind of up to the packs at random. But yeah. So why are we mentioning this? It was one of the secret layers that was not print to demand because they did want to get this out for holiday season, but it was very difficult to buy, and a lot of people bought them and then found out, they oversold. So they had to, like, retract some of their statements on who actually got one. Which reminds me a lot of when I tried to buy that War of the Spark Planeswalker Edition pack. And I got screwed over. You laugh, but...
I know, it's sad.
Why?
It's messed up.
I wanted that Jace the Mind Sculptor. But I don't even use them, so, like, what's the point? So, yeah. And then... God.
Oh, God.
There's this next one.
God, this is the worst one. This is by far the worst one.
This is probably... Okay, so I think I mentioned earlier in the episode that this was, like, the Innistrad double feature is the most not under-received, was the most disliked product. However, this one actually might have...
This one smashed it.
I think this one... Yeah, just because, like, this... Okay, so this one is the Magic 30 Anniversary packs, where you have 4 packs of cards where they are printed from the original set, with a few exceptions. So they all have retro frames, they all have... Or you could either get retro frames or modern frames. You could get cards like the Dual Lands. You could get cards like Black Lotus. You could get all the Power 9.
Wow.
And you're like, what are you talking about? They're never going to reprint those cards. Well then, yeah, here's the catch. These cards are not tournament legal. And they say that
on the back,
I believe, down at the bottom. And then on the back side, they also have different backings than, like, a typical Magic card. And you're like, oh, okay, so, yeah, what's this going to cost me? Well...
It's like $10, right?
This is going to cost you... No, it's going to cost you 100 times that.
What do you mean?
So $1,000.
What?
For 4 packs...
No!
15 cards in each pack, so 60 cards, $1,000. Might get a Black Lotus.
Yeah, so this is just an absurd price. Like, when I heard $1,000, I'm like, all right, I get an entire proxied set of Alpha, right? No, this is 4.
That's what I thought too.
Right? And then it's like, no, you get 4 packs
of random cards.
Of random cards. Like, oh my god. I was like, what? What? So the main issue, I think, is the fact that people have made, like, crunched the numbers and made websites explain to you how unlikely it is to get the few quote-unquote good, powerful cards in this, again, not tournament legal product. Like, your odds of getting a Black Lotus, the amount of money you have to spend to, like, statistically, like, pull one, you might as well buy a real fucking Black Lotus.
It's in my TCG cart. Thank you.
Oh my god.
Thank you for your permission.
Oh my god. And then the issue is, like, really, who is this product for? And the short, oversimplified answer is no one. Like, of all the different demographics of players and collectors, when you actually sit down to think about all the nuances of this product, nobody's really, like, wanting this product. And then, oh my god. And then the few times you do see, like, the, like, Mox Pearl or the Mox Sapphire that someone pulled, like, they're posting it for, like, at least $1,000 on the secondary market, or $2,000, and it's just like,
because you want to make your money back.
Yeah, and I'm just like, well, I can just go to Scryfall. I'm gonna hit save image. I'm going to go to my printer app and then press print, and it's basically the same thing because it's not tournament legal.
I mean, really, it is. So, yeah, those are the two most notable secret layers.
And then, I won't get into all the details, but, like, there's also just the fact that, like, this was marketed towards, like, some of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community, and how there was, like, a lot of backlash for that. And then, like, literally recently, it was actually Yu-Gi-Oh!, another well-known trading card game. It was their, like major anniversary date. You know what they did? They, like, actually printed, like, the original set. They just, like, pretty much reprinted, like, the original, like, Yu-Gi-Oh! Sets. Like, and they were normal priced and not just this fucking, like, 4-pack $1,000 bullshit. And they were legal.
Yeah, that is nice to see.
And they were legal.
I mean,
and they were legal.
Legal is kind of hard to say in Yu-Gi-Oh! Like, yeah, this card's legal, but it's not going to keep up with the meta.
Alright, we're not going to get down that rabbit hole. Yeah, I know what you're saying.
Yeah, we're not going down there. But, okay. So, you know, a lot of things. A lot of products we've talked about. What else, in terms of events, have happened? We got two notable ones, and this first one is more like what didn't happen. Ooh. So, we were expecting the Netflix show to come out this year, but I haven't heard anything since 2021. There's been no news, there's been no trailer, there's been no updates, nothing. So what's going on? We're kind of in the dark. There's no word that it was, like, officially canceled, but I think there's speculation that either it's in a lot of trouble or having troubles. But yeah, I was kind of looking forward to it. And I guess, like, maybe we could expect it sometime mid-2023, but I don't know. I feel like the clock's ticking, and the last time we did hear some news, it wasn't good news.
Yeah, I mean, I was really, like, looking forward to this, like, Netflix show because as a Magic the Gathering player, I want to care about the lore. I really do. But I don't. The stories and online articles throughout the years, unfortunately, have not been enough to draw me in. People always talk about how, like, well, one of the major upsides to Yu-Gi-Oh! Is the fact that the Yu-Gi-Oh! Anime came out during a lot of people's childhoods, and now those children have matured and can be, like, part of the card game's customer base. And that never happened for Magic, because Magic never put out a TV show. Well, now it's not too late. Like, let's put one out. Let's put the money into it. Let's see if we can drum up some support. And it just kind of seems to have silently died off, which is really tragic because within the last, like, few years or two, you can really see, like, the power of animation. You know, you can tell amazing stories with animation. Like, just recently we had Arcane. You had things like, I'd argue, like Chainsaw Man. Like, there's these amazing shows, even just the last couple of years, that are showing, like, pushing the frontier of that medium, and showing that, like, amazing stories can be told. And it's just like, Come on, Magic, I want you to be part of that. But you're not. Okay.
So I guess we'll just have to see. I hope us saying this and being skeptical or doubtful, comes to bite us in the butt in kind of the good way, where then it's like, boom, All Will Be One comes out, and then it's like, boom, Netflix show. And it's like, oh yeah, this is what I wanted.
Please prove me wrong. I love being proven wrong, and that things are better than they are.
For something like this, yes, I would rather be proven wrong.
I'd say the other major thing that happened this year was like a positive. Overall, it's the Magic the Gathering 30th anniversary event in Las Vegas just a couple months ago. So there were a lot of things that happened there. One of the most notable things was that the Command Zone podcast went and hosted a live Commander game in front of a live audience. It was incredibly popular, very well received. Later, the Command Zone podcast posted that essentially like live stream to their channel, and so like I've gotten to watch it since then, and it seemed like really well played out. Like it's really obvious, at least to me, where you kind of have to make these small little like changes to make this gameplay in a live setting appealing to an audience, because most of the time when you're playing a card game, you're just playing with the like people in your pod, like maybe like 3 or 4 like people like on average. But when you put it in front of a live audience and you're trying to make it entertainment to that audience, the nature kind of changes a little bit. That all being said, it was still fantastic. It was wonderful and had really high praise. I think there were a few issues though that happened during that event, one of which was the badge system. So when you go to these kinds of command fests or like Magic events, there's often like these tiers in which you can pay in, and like the higher you pay, basically the better rewards you get. Like you get more merch or like cool playmats or certain event promos. And one of the things was you don't get access to like the Command Zone unless you pay like hundreds of dollars. I don't remember the exact amount. And so the issue that started happening was here were all these basically like people wanted to play, but there weren't enough like tables, because all the tables that like were available were like for the higher paying tiers of badges. And it's like, well, why just pay hundreds of dollars to play Commander when we can literally just go to this table at this coffee shop across the street and play there for free and still have a great, wonderful experience overall. So like everyone was just like, let's just save hundreds of dollars and go over there. And so no one was actually in this area. And then you have all of the like tournament formats like Modern and like Pioneer and whatever other formats there are. I'm really bad, I'm sorry, I only care about Commander. And then they were like, well, here's all these open seats, but like we can't get access to it. So it was this huge fucking debacle. That being said, there was a lot of social media on that day, and then immediately event organizers saw it, they reacted, opened up that space for the next day, and it seemed like a great event from the rest of the time that the event ran. And it's kind of, in my opinion, a really good example of good event organizing.
Yeah, I actually didn't know that. I knew that there were problems initially, just because, like, Twitter is quick to complain, but I am glad that they were able to adjust so quickly and get players the experience that they were expecting to have while there, because if you are paying like hundreds of dollars to just go to the thing, and then also paying hundreds of dollars to travel, I would expect some kind of, nice experience.
Yeah, and I'm not going to lie, I think part of that is because there were a number of high-profile community members, like a lot. Like this was the event of the year in terms of Commander. And a lot of them sympathized with like, a majority of us common folk, and we're like, yeah, this is not quite right. They talked to event organizers listened and made a response that, in my opinion, was very good. They opened up the area, and the rest of the event time was very good for everybody, more or less.
And then I guess the last thing to just mention in terms of other notable events, but Rachel Weeks, who is on the Commander Advisory Group and the co-host to the podcast Commander Sphere, is now joining the Command Zone podcast as a third host. So they kind of like...
Okay, so I looked into this and clarified.
Like,
it says as part of the team. It doesn't say as part of the co-host. So I looked into this.
Okay, wait, let me double check that.
Sure.
Because I swear I, like, read host when I...
Maybe you're right, because the thing I looked up was from Rachel.
Okay, so I'm going to read this. So, Rachel Weeks is a Game Night CAG member and now full-time host and podcast manager for the Command Zone. The Command Zone specifically says full-time host.
Okay. That's not clear on the Commander Sphere website.
Probably not. And I bet it's still kind of I bet it's very fluid at the moment with her transition. So I'm sure we'll get more clarification as to, like, once that starts happening for her. Because I don't know if she's actually started working for them, or...
Well, I know that
like,
she's been part of
deal?
at least some of the ad roles.
Oh, okay.
I already recognized her
know
voice
that.
in some of the ad roles.
Okay. Rachel Weeks is now part of the Command Zone as a host, as a team member. Yeah, so just expect to see her more often. And congratulations.
Mm-hmm. I think overall it's a good move in terms of... I think she's a positive force in the community. I have listened to every single episode of the Commander Sphere. And I've listened to the Command Zone podcast for years, just to kind of stay up to date what they have to say, since they have such a large voice in the community. And I think that overall it's going to be a good partnership in terms of knowing everyone's personalities.
Alright, so now time to move into the most...
I think we're in the last leg of the race here.
Basically, like the last 5K. This is kind of what, like, the best of that we typically do for the year. So first we're starting with best set of the year. And I think you and I both agree, Kamigawa Neon Dynasty.
Yeah. Like, as good as Brothers...
started off strong.
Like, as good as Brothers War was, it was good. But honestly, like, Kamigawa Neon Dynasty, because there are a number of players who are just diehard. Like, I want to return to Kamigawa. It's so great. I know there are a bunch of design challenges. I know that the original Kamigawa did not sell well, but we think that there's a lot of good design space there. The fact that it's appeasing those people, and honestly, like, the more, like, common type of player, which is me, where it's just like, yeah, go back to the world, and if you can nail it, I'll love it. And they nailed it. Like, they nailed it in terms of just card design. They nailed it in terms of, like, all the cool commanders. They nailed it in terms of, like, cool cards that go in the 99. They nailed it in terms of, like, being, like, culturally appropriate, which could easily have gone wrong. They just nailed it pretty much in every dimension. And I know the cyberpunk aesthetic is very, like, popular amongst, like, geek culture. So overall, I just felt like it was a slam dunk. Like, honestly, like, every set comes out and there's always, like, some little critique of it. You know, I talked about Brothers War and how there's a small critique about Titania and Root Pathfinder, how they were hard to access. I heard no negativity about this set, and it was so refreshing. I was like, oh my god, this is so nice. Everyone is just happy. Everyone just loves this. This is amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I think I saw somewhere, and so I'm not going to be too specific, but it's already one of the best-selling sets of all time.
Good.
So, yes, like, I think Mark threw that out there somewhere, and so I think that's a pretty strong sign that we will return, again, to Kamigawa.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, for better or for worse, like, they're a business, and if a product sells well, like, there's a good chance they'll do something similar or in the future.
One thing I'd like to say is just that I feel refreshed in the sense that this year we did not get one card that was like too overly powerful that, like, we didn't get a Dockside, we didn't get a Drannith Magistrate, we didn't get anything.
We didn't
like
get
that,
House's
where
Oracle.
it's like, right,
That is
nothing
true.
like that,
oh
where
god,
we were
that
kind
is
of
true. That is nice.
So I think that's also nice because, you know, or WotC is kind of like taking into consideration when they're designing cards and, like, you know, making sure there's nothing too overly powerful that will warp the format. That being said, where's like the most powerful card? To me, I would actually give it to probably all 5 of the channel lands that we talked about. Just because I think they're a slam dunk in just like every deck you can run them in. Boseiju obviously being the best one, but...
So you think all
Yeah.
of them, it's not just Boseiju, you think about like the black one and the white one and like the red one?
I mean, I definitely say that, like, they're the best in terms of, like, the best cycle of new cards. But then, like, if you then get into, like, ranking them, it's like, oh, okay, so yeah, Boseiju's easily the best one.
I think we both agree in terms of that. Yeah, I'd say Boseiju's the best one. Just the fact that it's a card that, you know, of all these channel abilities, you have to spend a little bit of mana, and Boseiju is the one that costs the least at only 1 and a green. And then, so you just put out your commander, one of your commanders, and then it costs a single green mana, which is not that hard to do. And then you can just, like, discard it from your hand by paying that, like, 1 or 2 mana, and then you can destroy target artifact, enchantment, or non-basic land an opponent controls. And then there's other text. But really, it just destroys one of those 3 things, and not gonna lie, in the commander format, you're pretty much, there's always going to be an artifact or an enchantment or a non-basic land that's giving you grief. And the fact that this gets around, like, this isn't ever being cast, this is being activated. And the fact that it gets around, like, effects that stop you from casting multiple spells per turn, like rule of law effects, this is just so efficient.
It's an instant speed.
It's that instant speed. Yeah, just that, it's just such a powerful effect for such a low cost. Like many other cards in this game, when that sort of thing happens, not too surprised that it's powerful. Yeah, but I totally am glad that you mentioned that, where it's like, yeah, like this is powerful, but it's not like a Thassa's Oracle. It's not like a Dockside Extortionist. It's not like a Drannith Magistrate, where cards come out and then, like, ever since they're printed, and then, like, 1 or 2 years, or maybe multiple years afterwards, people in the community are constantly like, should we actually ban this? No, yeah, no, yeah. Oh, maybe there's a middle ground, and it's just like all of this online discourse, and it's like, y'all, just chill, please. It's nice not to be forced into that, because the card's not too powerful. It's just good.
Mm-hmm. Alright, so 425 new commanders.
Jesus Christ.
Who's the best one of the year? Or who strongest, I guess? Like,
I actually kind of had a hard time answering this question, to be honest.
Okay.
Oftentimes, when we ask this question at the end of our end-of-year reviews, I often go and listen to, like, prominent EDH figureheads and see, like, what they have to say. And I did, and this year I realized, oh, there's not really any new commander that's, like, in the new top tier, like, quote-unquote tier of that end of the format. There really isn't. When you listen to all those people, you realize there's Shorikai, the Azorius vehicle, like, mech thing, and then there's Evelyn or Cormella, who were in, like, New Capenna, but the only reason they're really being mentioned is the fact that they're Grixis, and the Grixis identity, as long as there's some amount of value stapled onto a commander, it's strong, just because that color identity at that end of the format is strong. So really, it's not like other years where, like, Najeela gets printed. Oh wow, Najeela's really fucking strong. It's one of the now most powerful CDH decks. Oh, Winota, do a little bit of tinkering, sees that Winota wins multiple CDH tournaments over the next like 2 or 3 years. Wow, Winota's really strong. That's not really happening. Like, I don't think Shorkai has come out, and I don't think it's going to start topping CDH tournaments in the next year or two. So, in my opinion, as a more like, I don't consider myself a CDH player, as a more like casual player, it's kind of nice for me where it's not like here's this new bust commander that's pushing that far end of the format. So for me, it's nice because it's not causing a whole bunch of discourse. Like maybe if you ask this question to more CEH players, they're going to be like, "Oh, well, there was nothing to really shake up the meta. It's kind of stale." So that's my long-winded answer. What do I think is the most powerful commander? If you had a gun to my head, Shorkai.
Yeah, I know that's the only one that's made it officially onto the CEDH like database.
Yeah, the decklist database.
But it is kind of hard because I think the other thing, just with the abundance of commanders, it's not like they're printing 5 of the same commanders and then you pick the best one. They are printing a pretty diverse selection of commanders you can choose from. And I also just realized like the number is significantly higher actually when you consider, all the legendary creatures who can have a background as their commander.
Yeah.
So really this number should almost be doubled, but
I mean, can we talk about that? The fact that within the last year or so, it seems like, oh, here's a card that seems like normal, but oh, they made it a legendary creature? Like, okay, that means that there's now a whole bunch of possible commanders being released every year. And I know, like, over the last year or two, we've kind of been saying that, but there was like a year with Commander Legends. But like this year, it truly just feels like, oh, they're just kind of slapping on legendary creature onto a whole bunch of cards that maybe don't need it, and it's like, oh my god, what's happening? Yeps.
Or even like when they did the Legends Lost with Dominaria United, where it's like we couldn't fit 25 other legendary creatures into this set, so they're going to be in this extra booster that you can get, and it's like,
oh my god,
what? Yeah.
So I mean, the downside to that is the fact that it's kind of overwhelming and you can easily lose track. But you could also play devil's advocate and you could argue that that's a good thing because that means there's so many new commanders, like you just have so many more options and there's the sense of discovery because it's easy to like overlook a commander and like start to like look into like wanting to build a new commander and realizing, oh, I didn't even know this existed. Like, this is so cool and so niche. Let's build it. So it's sort of like a 50-50 for me in terms of the phenomenon happening.
Yeah, I think especially as Commander again continues to be more popular, we get more commander decks, we're only going to get more commanders.
Is there such a thing as too much of a good thing?
I mean, we'll probably find out in another year or two once players are like, hey, you need to slow down, or you need to like cut this, because it is, I mean, yeah, it is difficult when there are 400 new commanders this year alone.
I mean, just personally speaking,
like,
that's part of the reason why we've slowed down how frequently we put out an episode. Like, yeah, it's just like we don't want to get overwhelmed. We don't want to get burnt out. That being said, like, hey, guy, the year's not over. Most powerful commander, there's Elish Norn, the new mono white commander that costs 5 mana.
No. Can't talk about her just yet.
Well, come on, like, it's been spoiled and like, you know, it should be banned, you know, right? Like the discourse that came out today.
You're becoming your own worst enemy, Blake.
Give it 4 years, I'm just going to be playing a full pod just by myself.
Yeah. So I mean, we've kind of now gotten into this next topic with like thoughts on 2022. We've talked about the high abundance of commanders that there have been. Definitely feeling the burnout, as you know, we have put out a lot fewer episodes than we have in previous years, just because it is so hard to keep up with everything, and we were just getting so tired of doing 3 to 4 episodes on one set alone with the amount of stuff we need to review.
believe it or not, we have lives outside of Commander.
Yes. I think one of the other positives, though, thoughts on 2022, or one of them, the Rules Committee and CAG have both grown and been restructured a little bit. In previous years, it's mostly been just like, the CAG's been expanded and added some members. But yeah, we got 2 new people on the Rules Committee.
I think overall, it's changes that I am in favor of. In terms of, like, people who have come on, restructuring, and people who have moved from the CAG to the RC. Like, I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of, like, critiquing the RC and the CAG as institutions that have certain amounts of power over the format's rules. That's its own separate discussion, but overall, it's a direction that I am in favor of. And leaves me optimistic for the future. As critical and as cynical as you want to be, I think when you take a few steps back and see the big picture of things, I think overall we're facing and moving in a positive direction. That's my personal opinion, though.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. We didn't have any bannings or unbannings this year. I feel like in terms of that, it was a little lackluster. But that also just kind of means that the format is in a healthy place.
Alright. So, Guy, there's really like one last question that I have, and I really want to get your thoughts on as someone who has a mono white deck. Like, over the last year or two, the community's really asked for WotC to print good white cards. Good white commanders. Good white cards for the 99 for those white commanders. And we have arguably started to see some of those designs. I'll just list a few of them. There's Myrel, Shield of Argive. There's Archivist of Ogma. There's Deep Gnome Terramancer. And there's a whole bunch more. Do you want to talk about any of those cards, or do you have any input?
I don't want to get into too specifically of one card in particular, but overall, I think that this has been the best year for white in general. Mm-hmm. We have a lot of cards that have the catch-up mechanic where, yes, you have Archivist of Ogma, who's allowing you to draw cards and gain life for a basic function of the game whenever your opponents search your library. Deep Gnome Terramancer is another good catch-up card. We got cards like Myrel, who are great at allowing you to do your things when you want to do them. We got some interesting commanders like Light Paws, Ao the Dawn Sky, who is the white dragon from Kamigawa. One card you didn't include on here, Blake, that I should have included earlier is the Wandering Emperor, who is a very strong... I mean, you joke because I do want that very expensive version of her, but she's a very strong planeswalker. She's the first one to have flash, allow you to use an ability on the turn she comes in, and then you can she's very good. So yeah, I would say definitely if we have another year like this for 2023, and yeah, I guess we're going to talk about Mommy Elish Norn, but that's already a really good start.
Yeah, I think I agree, where I think this is one of the years that's strongest for white cards to be printed for the Commander format. In all of the debates and in all of the discussions, I can't help but think about a few years prior, when the community was asking for WotC to print better red cards for Commander. Because at the time, there's a bit of argument or debate there, but at the time, red was the weakest color in Commander. And so WotC spent a bit of time, and they printed really strong cards. And it turns out you don't need to print too many strong cards before you really bring up a color in Commander. You print stuff like Dockside Extortionist, Jessica's Will. You print stuff like Deflecting SWAT. Stormkiln Artist. What else? Underworld Breach, Tybalt's Trickery, Bergie, Wheel of Misfortune, and a handful of other things, and suddenly it really raises up the color professional facebreaker. And so I'm now I've gone through that experience, and now I'm kind of waiting for that to happen for white, where I'm asking myself, has that sort of phenomenon, is that going to happen for white? Will it? And so we have really strong cards, I'd argue, like Argivist of Ogma, like Myrel, Shield of Argive. We just got the new Elish Norn, and now there's been an article that came out today where it's like, is this card too strong? And it's really starting up that debate. My personal opinion is we have not met that apex yet. I think it's still off in the future to happen. I want WotC to keep printing more powerful white cards, and then maybe one day we as a community will be satisfied. But I don't think it's happened yet.
I agree with the amount of years behind just, green just having one of the most fundamental best things to do in Magic, and especially in EDH.
Ramp.
It is very hard for white to do stuff like that in just like a quick shift, because we need to still stay true to the color identity. We can't just print a white Kodama's Reach or a white Cultivate and call it a day. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I do think, I agree, we haven't reached the apex of, we have now a critical mass of too many good white cards. Mm-hmm. But I do think we are well on our way to seeing some stronger white cards and getting some more interesting design space in white that will allow it to really compete as its own color in Magic. Because it's a great support color. I will give it that, with some of the best removal.
Yeah.
But we want mono white decks.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm looking at EDH Rec, their mono white commanders page, and some of the more recent cards have actually skyrocketed towards being some of the most popular mono white commanders. Like the mono white angel commander that I was talking about is actually number 1. I didn't even realize that until just this moment. Lightpaws, Emperor's Voice,
now I'm looking
is number 2, and the one that's sort of Aura Voltron, I thought it was actually Heliod's Suncrowned, and I mean that's still kind of relatively new, but I thought that was number 1. It's already number 3. You got Adeline Resplendent Cathar as number 5. You've got Oswald Fiddlebender as number 7. So these newer mono white commanders are really moving up the ranks pretty quickly in terms of being popular, but in terms of power level, I don't think we're quite there yet. In terms of mono white power level, there's still Heliod Suncrowned and Tashar at the very, very top, and then it's a really wide chasm, in my personal opinion, as to the next most powerful mono white commanders. So, I'm starting to get into too much detail. Let's move on.
Yep, I mean, moving on is moving out. So, we thank you very much for listening. It's been a great year for 2022, Magic in general. And so, just have a safe, happy holidays, and we'll see you soon. So, we are the Wizard Staff. You can listen to us on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, YouTube, and anywhere else you listen to your podcasts. Make sure you leave a like and review. You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at WizardStaff101. Send us an email at thewizardstaff101@gmail.com if you want to bitch and complain about how stupid we are. Which we are. Thank you for listening, and we hope you have a great night. Peace out.
Peace.